Chapter 23. There was a good saying. Although the elves were the kings of the forest, how could they not pick up fish when they often walked by the river? An elven warrior's armor was too heavy. The tree branch under his feet suddenly cracked. He did not fall. His nimble movements allowed him to grab onto the main branch of the tree in an instant. William smiled at this. Look, didn't you almost fall off the tree? But the tree branch under his feet fell right beside a few orcs, scaring them. They held their axes and looked around, thinking that justice had fallen from the sky. This was what happened. The elven warrior, hugging onto the tree, looked at his companions around him expressionlessly, but William still thought about it. Could it be that his luck was too low and pulled down the average luck of the entire legion? Yes. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Before the other orcs could shout, all the archers with bows and arrows drew their bows and shot. There was no need for orders in this situation. Their mission was to attack without hesitation the moment they were discovered and give the orcs the heaviest blow, instead of letting the Lord speak and letting the enemy be on guard. After all, they had been here for a period of time. The dwarfs' thin and small bodies would probably not be able to withstand the orcs' repeated attacks. When hundreds of battle energy arrows streaked across the sky, they shot through the dense leaves. The exaggerated battle energy tore countless leaves, and the sky was filled with green residue. As for the next moment, the howling continued. Hundreds of orcs' heads burst with blood and fell to the ground. Many orcs were completely injured. At that moment, many orcs woke up. The wall hangers were here, but there were as many as 1,500 orcs attacking the dwarf's cave. Among them, 500 orcs had already rushed into the cave and started a bloody and sweaty hand-to-hand battle with the dwarfs. And the leader was a tall orc holding a huge sword. His skin was white and covered with black tattoos. This was a pale orc with a grandmaster bloodline that ordinary orcs could not inherit. He looked at the arrows flying towards him, but he sat motionlessly on top of the giant wolf. His eyes were still flickering with a cold smile. This was because he had casually released a Do-Chi shield from his body, causing all the arrows that approached him to fall instantly. That feeling, it was like a needle that had to be inserted into a stone that had no gaps. No matter how hard he squeezed, no matter how much strength he used, he could only weakly fall to the ground. His powerful strength and deterrence caused the other orcs to be filled with morale just by standing still. An elf from a border town? Then let's get rid of them first, then deal with those dwarves. The pale orc let out a muffled roar. The thousands of orcs behind him drew their weapons coldly and charged at the elves at the same time. They had to face several times the number of orcs. Would William be in trouble? That was for sure. No way. Uncle Lautner, I'll leave it to you. William patted him on the shoulder. This distant uncle, who had no blood relations with William, twitched his mouth, but he still nodded heavily and landed on the ground. Before the leaves around him could be lifted, they were torn to shreds by his Do-Chi. As he walked forward step by step, the shreds slowly fell to the ground. From the various situations, it could be seen that his control of battle chi and his ability to act cool were simply superb, even to the extent that he had been looking forward to it for a long time. The rest of you, attack with all your arrows. Leave the front to our hero, Lautner. William was not joking. He did not let any of the elfin warriors or magic swordsmen come down from the tree to fight, because, after all, this was a novice area. Whether it was near the border town or within the borders of the two grand duchies, as long as they did not leave this area. In version 1.0, the highest level NPCs nearby were only level 70, and there were very few of them. And no matter how powerful their bloodline was, no matter how powerful their identity was, they were still in the growth stage and had not reached the upper limit of their bloodline potential. For example, the giant dragon in the snow mountain of the East Sea looked very powerful, and its body was also very huge. But in front of a true expert, this dragon with legendary bloodline was just a young dragon, or even a young dragon. It was far from growing up. As for Lautner, a level 52 boss with epic bloodline. In terms of true strength, he was definitely not weaker than a level 60 boss with a grandmaster bloodline. When players observed NPCs, they looked at their bloodline and level. Because the higher the bloodline, the more it meant that this boss could have a lot of explosive power. But what did NPCs look at? That was the aura of energy in the body and physical fitness. They could not see through bloodline. At least half of the NPCs could not see through it. AD cultivated battle energy. AP cultivated magic. And how did NPCs view levels? And what did levels represent? This represented the NPC's personal attributes and represented his physical fitness. As for battle energy and magic, it represented the amount of energy in the body and the quality of the energy. In other words, an NPC's bloodline potential almost represented whether he could continue to strengthen his physical fitness and even understand battle energy techniques, and whether he had the ability to break through to the next realm. NPCs were like a different world. They had to practice techniques, and their physical fitness and battle energy, magic, had to improve at the same time, slowly increasing their strength. And players were fighting monsters, doing missions, and even eating, and so on, to gain experience. Experience could be allocated to levels and techniques at the same time, completely breaking away from the various requirements to break through to the next stage of low-level fun. Basically, for every big breakthrough, they only needed to complete a few missions. But the later the missions, the more difficult it was, less idle talk. As a demon hunter ranger, although it was a hidden profession, Lautner was still a kiting type. But he carried a shining long sword and walked slowly toward the orc army. All these showed that he really did not want to spoil the orcs in front of him. It was impossible to fight against 1,000 orcs alone, but he was alone. Even if the orcs surrounded him, how many people could he face at the same time? Seeing this scene, the pale orc leader's expression was cold, and the breath in his nostrils became heavier and heavier. Even the huge sword in his hand was releasing vigorous battle energy. He could feel that powerful breath and recognized at a glance that he was in existence of the same level as himself. But Lautner's arrogance and self-confidence were simply like a god looking down on insects. This feeling made the pale orc could not help but think of the past. That was when he was as small as a puppy. He was lying in a pile of dirty feces, revealing 2 bright eyes, watching the elves brutally slaughtering his tribe. The elves did not leave a single person alive, and his parents fell in a pool of blood, but he did not care. But next door, Uncle Mr. Wong, who loved him the most, also turned his body before dying and fell in front of him, silently using his hands to cover his wet eyes with feces. Ah, get out of here, you bunch of trash. The pale orc's eyes became redder and redder. He watched as Lautner killed half of the orc army like a god of war, and he finally could not take it anymore. Chapter 24. Lautner saw that the pale orc was enraged. He waved his hand, and a dazzling sword chi tore a bloody line in the orc army. He was as fast as lightning. When the sword chi disappeared completely, he had already arrived in front of the pale orc. Behind him were dismembered orcs on both sides. It was a shocking sight to see their broken limbs and blood flowed like a river. A mid-level elf with an epic bloodline and a demon hunter ranger with a hidden profession. With his terrifying strength, he could really fight against 100 orcs alone. Oh, a pale orc? A rare species from the Second Era. My father killed dozens of them. Where did you come from, an ancient species? Lautner looked at him carefully. His aura was slightly higher than his, but not by a rank. Hence, he did not seem to care and looked at him with a look of disdain. Of course, he still knew what was going on. He held his sword tightly in his hand, ready to fight at any time. What about the pale orc? He hated the elf's big eyes the most. Or rather, no race like the elf's beautiful, arrogant, and condescending eyes. They said, I think you're a scum. I'm her great-grandfather. I killed your great-grandfather. I killed your grandfather. I killed your father. I can't beat you, but I can torture you to death. Come and hit me. You can't beat me. I'm awesome because I've lived longer than you. Anyway, the elf was second to none in terms of attracting hatred in the gods' continent. It was basically maxed out. Hence, Lautner's words. The pale orc was so angry that he was trembling, It was a tradition in the gods' continent for many years that the two armies did not fight each other directly. When two armies were at war, if the generals of the armies met each other, they would mock each other and force each other to curse at each other to increase their hatred. Only then would they continue to fight. I'll pull your head off and stuff it into your asshole. You pointy ears, are you determined to save those dwarves? Although the pale orc was the commander of this army, he still had a mission. An orc with this bloodline would not have low intelligence. Even if the elves and orcs were mortal enemies, he still wanted to ask if this battle could be avoided. After all, he wasn't afraid. He was just asking casually. As for whether his cursing would lead to an unavoidable war, he didn't care. When Lautner heard that he was going to stick his head into his, but he didn't listen to the rest of the sentence and directly spat out a mouthful of elven phlegm, which landed on the pale beastman's beloved sword. Without a doubt, the two fellows, who were not in the mood to talk, instantly started fighting. William stood on a treetop and temporarily stopped the elves from shooting arrows. The orcs had also not taken the initiative to attack Lautner. This was an unavoidable duel. When someone could tear apart an army's formation and rush to the enemy's general, no one could stop this kind of duel. Otherwise, they would be despised by the gods. Players love to be spurned by others. Therefore, after the chosen ones descended on the gods' continent for a few years, no one cared about the etiquette of the gods with the players anymore. As long as the enemy was an army of immortal chosen ones, it was fine. As for the elves' foul mouths and spitting, wasn't that normal? Don't elves need to poop and pee? Could it be that the farts of elves were fragrant? Don't elves need to bathe? Could it be that you wanted to say, Goddess, don't be like this. Pooping will make you lose your halo. If the goddess hears this, she will slap you to death. In short, in the gods' game, you would see the truest elves and other races. You could also see an elf who was very different on the battlefield, and on an ordinary day, you could see the perfection, elegance, and kindness of the elves in the peaceful forest. You could also see them on the battlefield waving their knives at any living creature, no matter if they were sick or disabled, old or young. That kind of extreme indifference towards life often brought great shock to many people who did not know the truth. They were the most extreme living creatures, but they were also the most outstanding warriors. Bang! Both of them used swords. One was a one-handed sword, the other a two-handed heavy sword. Logically, when these weapons collided, the one-handed sword user would often be suppressed. But the advantage brought by bloodline and occupation allowed Lautner to be on par with his opponent. Surging battle energy wreaked havoc in a radius of 10 meters. The grass and trees turned into pieces and were blown far away by wave after wave of airwaves. In just a few seconds, many bloody wounds appeared on both of them. Not every attack could be blocked, but for the elves, they were not afraid of exchanging injuries for injuries. Because they were true, pure-blooded elves, they had no shortcomings. Their defense was also much higher than other races, especially for a boss with an epic bloodline like Lautner. He knew that he had a lot of health in his body and was not afraid of losing it all. The two of them fought fiercely. Battle energy shot out in all directions. Under the collision of their battle energy, the ground under their feet sank layer by layer. The scene was very exaggerated and shocking. The orcs cried out in surprise. From time to time, they could even discuss who would win. If their leader lost, what would happen to them? For most orcs, wasn't this something they would only consider after they lost? But seeing their leader, who had the upper hand, being beaten back, they began to feel uneasy, and the elves stood expressionlessly on the treetops. They did not cheer or shout, only silence. Their eyes were fixed on the center of the battlefield, ready to attack at any time. Were the elves not excited? Yes, they were. But the spirits felt that shouting and shouting was too degrading for them. It did not match their proud status. After all, they were all long-lived species and had seen a lot. They must not have the same behavior as these short-lived species. Otherwise, it would definitely drag down the B rating of the elves. So, seeing the elves charge expressionlessly, killing, and even being hacked to death without crying out in pain, it was all because of the B rating of their race. William looked at the battlefield without blinking. He was not too worried that Lautner would lose. According to his thoughts, Lautner would definitely win, and this group of orcs would not be able to escape. Otherwise, why would William, who had so few troops, come to save these dwarves? But what he was most worried about was who was behind these orcs. Was it an ordinary orc tribe? Or was it a tribe under the giant dragon? The difference between the two was like heaven and earth. Although the giant dragon might not have the heart to take revenge for the orcs, it was very likely that the orcs would be eaten because of their failure. But it was better to be safe than sorry. The giant dragon of the snow mountain of the EC was really going to come out early. Then the border town would be fun if there were no accidents. In the later stages of version 1.0, the giant dragon in the snow mountain of the EC was almost a level 70 legendary dragon boss. And now, it was a year before the open beta. Even if the giant dragon was not level 70, it was at least level 60, no matter what. This dragon was a huge threat to them. Chapter 25. The fierce fighting at the entrance of the dwarf cave had stopped. Some of the dwarven warriors, who were covered in blood, propped themselves up against the wall and walked into the empty cave. They finally saw their saviors. Pure-blooded elves, Blackleaf Forest elves? Why are they here? A dwarf exclaimed. The elves of the border town. You haven't gone out to patrol, so you don't know that an elven prince has come to the border town. A short but gorgeous dwarf warrior raised his eyebrows and said, How could a pure-blooded elven prince come to such a place? He's already at the edge of the Blackleaf Forest. This elven prince is too careless. Isn't he afraid of being caught by evil people? Someone sighed worriedly. How would I know? Odom, with a hint of envy in his words, could not explain, but he was also right. Because according to bloodline, William was the prince of the Blackleaf Elves. The royal bloodline of the Blackleaf Forest was extremely rare, and there were many who died on the battlefield. In addition, the elves were long-lived species, and their fertility was very worrying, so there was not much emphasis on seniority. Basically, as long as the elven king did not die, all the other descendants with royal bloodline would be conferred the title of princess or prince. And any princess or prince also had the right to inherit the throne. But the key still depended on their own influence and support, as well as the elven king's decree. It was a pity that William's father was a human. In terms of bloodline, he was the prince of the Blackleaf Elves. Even with the 500 private soldiers, he could barely be regarded as a little prince. It was a pity. He did not have a real status. And the reason why Odom determined that he was an elven prince was because he had secretly observed. It was because he had secretly observed that the 500 elfin guards were abnormally respectful to William. This was enough to prove that William was the prince of the elves. Only the nobility of the elven royal family could make other elves bow their heads respectfully. Wait, you said that he came here too carelessly. What do you mean? Odom looked unhappy. He held his hammer and turned back to ask. The dwarf warrior who spoke just now shut his mouth and pretended to look at the wall of the cave entrance, as if he wanted to use his fingers to dig out some mithril or something. Because Odom's bloodline was also royal, and he was the last heir of the royal bloodline of the Lonely Mountain. The last king of Lonely Mountain, Odom Heavyhammer. Perhaps the humans of this era had long forgotten the surname Hammer. However, in the past, the surname Hammer was no less dazzling than the elves. It was not something that the surnames of the 7 dwarven kingdoms could compare to. But after the fall of the Lonely Mountain Great Emperor, Odello Heavyhammer, a civil war broke out among the dwarves. The dwarves who were truly loyal to the descendants of the Lonely Mountain Emperor suffered heavy casualties and could only escape with their only young prince. On the other hand, the dwarves who started the war claimed that they could not find a true heir of the royal bloodline, so they regretfully proclaimed themselves as kings. As for who started the civil war, at least half of the 7 great dwarf kingdoms were participating, but the elegant and proud elves, even if they had many fierce battles, would always make the dwarves feel that they were delicate and shouldn't have come to such a dangerous place. As for the thick-skinned dwarves, of course, he could go anywhere. Remember, don't reveal my surname. From now on, my surname is Hammer. Odom Hammer, Grandmaster Blacksmith. Odom said decisively after seeing Lautner finally defeat the pale orc. The other dwarven warriors nodded. The current situation was very obvious. The elven prince of the border town had come to rescue them. They definitely had to pay more than just the mithril mine. Moreover, Odom also had plans. However, there was a conversation going on. The one-on-one battle had also ended. Lautner used the tactic of exchanging injuries and angrily cut off the pale orc's head. The head is dead? The orcs were stunned. Oh, **T. A berserker orc saw the elves surrounding him and decisively threw away the weapon in his hand. He picked up a pickaxe from the ground with great familiarity and waved it around a few times. He felt that it was quite handy, so he pretended to dig the ground again. When the other orcs saw this, they immediately put down their weapons and looked around. It seemed that the pale orc just now had nothing to do with them. William saw this scene and couldn't help but want to laugh, but the arrogant elven guards didn't allow him to laugh. So he shut his mouth and slowly came to the side of Lautner, whose back was facing them. The longsword in Lautner's hand touched the ground. His hands gently rested on the sword hilt. His gaze swept across all the orcs. He was very domineering. "Resist or surrender," William said in a deep voice, expressionless. His voice was loud and clear. "Surrender. Surrender." The orcs all knelt on the ground, expressing their surrender. According to the experience of the orcs and elves, they knew that the elves usually didn't kill captives. They would only kill the enemies who escaped or resisted. The other captives would at least become miners. As for the highest treatment, the heads of fellow miners, but there was nothing bad about becoming miners. There was a certain chance of escaping. They could also eat and drink well. This was a little impossible, but it was enough that they wouldn't die immediately. The most important thing was, the pressure that Lautner gave them was too great. The pale orc that they used to look up to was easily beheaded by Lautner. The head that died with grievances was stepped on by Lautner. This scene was enough to bring great pressure to the orcs. In particular, the orcs liked to surrender to the strong. It was just like how they had to endure the pressure of dying at any time to become the Dragon's Clan. After all, even if they wanted to escape, they had to have a chance. This was the forest. Disarm all of them and take off all their armor. Bring them to the iron mine first. William waved his hand. Knox instructed the elfin guards to bring this group of people away. Subsequently, he turned his head to look at the dwarves at the entrance of the cave. He grinned and said, "Dwarven friends, I hope that my rescue is in time. Odom Heavyhammer's affinity plus 188 Peter Boulder's affinity plus 230 Rona." When William saw the series of affinity points, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows slightly. He smiled proudly. No matter what, if he hadn't led the elfin troops to rescue them, the dwarves would have been trapped in the mine and cruelly killed by the orcs. The affinity points were self-evident, but it was a pity. The camp affinity points that William had been looking forward to the most were actually not there. William's mouth twitched. He carefully looked at the new information. There really wasn't any camp affinity points. What did this mean? This unnamed elf prince was still guessing when he suddenly saw the first person who increased his favorability rating. Odom Heavyhammer had only added 188 favorable impression points. The debt of saving his life had given him a mere 188 points. Didn't he know that the maximum affinity points for a normal NPC was 1,000? Heavyhammer? William suddenly widened his eyes. He carefully looked at the information and glanced at the slightly taller guy among the dwarves. He had a head of golden hair, a resolute and handsome face, and a height of 1.5 meters. He was also holding a familiar hammer with a slight electric current circling it. William sucked in a breath of cold air. He couldn't help but start to admire the creator of the God's Game. Wasn't he afraid of receiving a lawyer's letter from Marvel? But he still walked over with a face full of smiles. He slowly put the hand that was about to pat his head on his shoulder and said, "I wonder who is the leader?" Odom Heavyhammer glanced at the slender hand on his shoulder before looking up at him. "Odom Heavyhammer, I am their leader." William pondered for 2 seconds. "William Blackleaf, do you need any help? The orc attack caused us to suffer heavy losses. I've decided to lead all the dwarves under my command and join the border town to seek protection. I wonder if your highness will welcome us?" "Of course. Welcome to join us. Elfin friends forever. William squinted his eyes and smiled. Your Highness? Just these 4 words. He would take in this underling. Chapter 26. The lifespan of dwarves was longer than that of humans. Even ordinary people could live for 200 to 500 years. Of course, every level would increase their lifespan. If they could really have the strength of a legendary level, they would be a long-lived species. But there was still a difference in races. For example, the legendary handsome elves had a lifespan of at least 3 times that of legendary humans. Report. An elfin ranger rushed over. Speak. Another 1,000 orc reinforcements are rushing over. It seems that they're the elites of the orc race. When William heard this, he frowned and said to Odom, How many people are there in your clan? Move them as soon as possible. 1,600 people, only 300 of whom can fight. Odom smiled bitterly. Although he was also a member of the royal family of the dwarves, they had been wandering around for many years. Thousands of years had passed, and the original hundreds of thousands of followers had gradually decreased with the pursuit. The speed of newborns was far faster than the speed of death. Even so, the clan under his command could still maintain more than 10,000 people. But 30 years ago, in a betrayal, his epic-level father died. Most of the combat power and people died in battle in the former hiding place. Odom Heavyhammer, who was only in his 20s, led the remaining 1,000 or so people to hide and eventually discovered this mithril vein. Taking advantage of the mining advantage that their ancestor had given them, they dug deep holes and stored up food. Ever since then, they had been hiding here. Even those who had chased them thought that they were already dead. William understood almost without Odom's explanation. Logically speaking, this kind of powerful dwarf prince who had not died after being chased for so many years was definitely not that simple. Because this kind of person often carried the halo of a protagonist. But why had he not heard of Odom's name before? It was very likely that Odom had been killed in the mine by the orcs. Those orcs just now were far from being able to kill these dwarves. But what about the continuous reinforcements? This was the last straw that forced the dwarves to die. Unknowingly, his early rescue in this life had changed the course of history, but it had also attracted a lot of hatred. Third stage of the mission. Completed. Reward. 50,000 experience. Reward. A mithril vein that has not been assigned yet. William glanced at the mission. He did not put his experience in a leveling up. Instead, he gave an order. Odom, let your people come out first. Immediately migrate to the border town. Just bring some personal belongings. Don't bother about the other things. We'll leave immediately. Okay. Odom went into the cave without looking back and immediately organized the evacuation. William patted Lautner's shoulder. How was it? Lautner's shoulder trembled as blood flowed down his arm. The wound that he had just blocked with his combat aura was broken again. However, he still looked to the east with a cold smile and said, It's just a small injury. I can still fight another 300 rounds. Even if another 1,000 beastmen come at me, they won't be able to kill me with half a hand. Then it's all up to you. Lautner was silent for 2 seconds. He looked at William with a sincere gaze, as if he wanted to say something. Prepare for battle. Mages, organize the magic circle. Lautner, you rest first. William took a few steps forward and skillfully commanded the remaining 100 elfin warriors. He said in a deep voice, We will protect our allies and evacuate. The elves will never stand behind the dwarves. Yes, my lord. All the elves looked shocked. They, who were arrogant, were instantly full of fighting spirit and actively prepared for battle. What magic circle? What buff? Can this sentence be of any use? It was simply a joke. With just a little provocation from William, the elves would feel as if they were on steroids. However, things did not develop that badly. When Lautner and the pale orc were fighting alone, the dwarf had already dealt with the orcs in the cave. After discovering the rescue elves, they were ready to evacuate. In less than 10 minutes, all the dwarves ran to the north. The speed of their evacuation was amazing. All kinds of skilled, moving operations made William stunned. He could only secretly sigh in his heart. As expected of the lonely mountain dwarves who had been chased for thousands of years, their escape speed was first class. Their running speed in the forest was not any worse than that of the elves. Odom naturally did not evacuate. He let 100 dwarf warriors follow the main force and left with 200 dwarf warriors. William glanced at the dwarf warriors who had been fighting for a long time and were covered in blood. He pondered for a while and did not intend to eat these 1,000 orcs. What he was most afraid of now was losing soldiers and generals. He was not playing a game. He was now the lord of the border town. If he wanted to continue to develop, then everyone was a resource. He could not waste them. Especially Lautner, who could resist and fight, had not recovered from his injury. Lautner, who was recovering under the care of the female elf warrior, suddenly felt a little bad. He secretly glanced at William and saw that he was smiling extremely sinisterly. Fortunately, William waved his hand and chose to evacuate. Only then did he completely put his heart, which was in his throat, back into his stomach to warm up. When 1,000 orc elites came to the mithril mine, a tall and pale orc slowly walked out of the crowd. He saw the messy cave entrance and the traces leading to the north. At the same time, an orc priest with a staff, also wearing a black cloak, only revealing his gloomy green eyes, slowly walked out. The elves of the border town saved them. The pale orc brutally waved his warhammer and broke an innocent tree before saying in a deep voice, "I know. Chase after them. We have already collected half of the bounty and magic materials." The orc priest pointed to the north gloomily. "Chase after them? How can we chase after them?" The pale orc looked at him with a sneer. He directly pulled the reins and turned his head to say, "We have collected half of the bounty, and many of our people have died. Since they have run away, let that group of traitors find someone else." Then he looked at the orc high priest, whose status was comparable to his. "Remember, we should not have appeared here, especially when we accepted the bounty mission privately. We have already committed a big mistake. We even secretly left those treasures. Have you ever thought that if Master knows about this, our clan will continue to live under his nose?" The pale orc rode away on his giant wolf, and the other orc soldiers followed without hesitation. At this moment, the orc priest reluctantly shifted his gaze from the north. It was also at this moment that he remembered how tyrannical and cruel his master was. Who was their master? Naturally, it was the giant dragon of the snow mountain of the East Sea. He was supreme. His wingspan was more than 10 meters. Just a sneeze from him could bury hundreds of people in a sea of fire. He was the most terrifying elemental dragon. Their master was the fire dragon. Among all the giant dragons, the fire dragon had the most terrifying combat power. No one wanted to experience the feeling of being stared at by a fire dragon, and being hated by a fire dragon was the world's greatest misfortune. Their orc tribe was just one of the many clans under their master. They were far inferior to those stronger clans. They had long learned to be respectful, instead of continuing to be greedy. Chapter 27. More than 1,000 people ran through the dense forest, leaving only the sound of rapid breathing and the rustling of footsteps on the grass. The atmosphere of the dwarfs was not very good. They had just been surrounded by the orcs in a corner, and nearly 100 dwarf warriors had died. They were mourning and reminiscing because they could not even bury the bodies of their people underground. All the grief could only be carried out in silence. Odom was a dwarf prince with an epic bloodline. He was not young, but because he rarely ate magical beast meat and potions, he was only level 43. In the face of the elite orc warriors, who were more than level 30, and some level 40 orc leaders, he could not fight against 100. Whether it was NPCs, magical beasts, or giant dragons, they could all rely on food and training to increase their strength. They did not have to reach adulthood to reach the peak of their combat power. The bloodline potential of NPCs limited the growth of the battle energy and magic he learned. There would be no upper limit to the level. In other words, NPCs with high-level bloodline potential could break through level 100 and even reach level 200. Their attributes would increase with their level, but the battle energy, magic, that NPCs cultivated would reach the upper limit. Battle energy value, battle energy power, and battle energy quality would not continue to increase after exceeding level 100. In this life, If there were no accidents, they could only use high-level battle energy. Because of the limitations of the bloodline, which was also the limitation of talent, NPCs were unable to break through to the next stage. But as long as they did not die and did not enter the weak period of old age, their personal strength, upgraded attributes, would continue to grow. In a word, the quality of battle energy represented one's level. Level could not truly represent one's level. Just like a middle-aged fighting master, in terms of physical attributes, it is definitely much higher than a young fighting master. But the middle-aged fighting master's talent has reached the ceiling. From now on, he can only increase his physical fitness, but he can't break through to the fighting emperor. The speed of the march was very fast. When William led the 1,600 dwarfs back to the territory, most of the civilians came out and looked at the group of dwarfs with surprised and puzzled expressions. After all, the terrain of the forest was not the environment that dwarfs liked to live in. They preferred open plains or mountains with rugged mountains. It was hard to imagine why they came out of the forest. "This is my territory, the border town. You can stay here temporarily, or you can choose to join my territory." At this moment, William chose to go straight to the point. Odom Heavyhammer stood at a high place and looked at the sparsely populated town. He then glanced at his clansmen who had longing in their eyes and could only sigh. "I will bring my clansmen to join the town. I hope our arrival will not bring trouble to his lordship." William held his hand warmly and said, "There will definitely be trouble, but we can face it head-on, can't we?" Then, he looked at the town that did not have many empty rooms and said awkwardly, "There are not many residents in this town, and there are very few tree houses. There are not many suitable houses for you to live in, I understand. Human houses are not suitable for dwarves to live in. We will build our own houses." Odom nodded and silently pulled his hand back. He was under the eaves and had to lower his head, but he did not want to sell his body. He was tired. His people were also tired. They had been running around for too long. They didn't dare to look for powerful allies, for example. The most powerful existence in the Blackleaf Forest, the main city of the Blackleaf Elves. He didn't dare to ask for their help, because Odom knew that the elves would not help him restore his kingdom, although they would not sell them. The feeling of living under someone else's roof was too uncomfortable. They also didn't dare to contact other dwarf kingdoms, because he didn't know who would continue to betray him, the fallen prince of the empire. As for the elven prince in front of him, which orthodox elven prince would come to such a remote and desolate place to build a territory, and even occupy the territory of a former human expert? Odom Heavyhammer was not stupid. He used the blonde hair on his head to think, and he knew that the guy in front of him might be the illegitimate child of that legendary human. Both of them had similar status. They could have a good foundation for cooperation. At least, under the circumstances that the prince did not go overboard. He planned to stay here for a long time. Odom Heavyhammer was really tired and in despair. He had been on the run for many years, and he had long lost the desire to restore his kingdom, because he knew how slim the hope of restoring his kingdom was. He just wanted to protect his followers in peace. If he could establish a foothold in a place, that would be the best. The premise was he couldn't let his followers feel humiliated, because his family had a glorious history that spanned 2 whole eras. They had once defeated the Balrog and destroyed the invasion of the dark creatures. So when William asked him if he was interested in being the deputy mayor, Odom was pleasantly surprised. He took the initiative to hold William's hand tightly. "Really? Can I be the deputy mayor with my ability? Of course, I have high hopes for you." William smiled and patted his shoulder, smoothing his blonde hair. Deputy mayor was just a title, and William didn't care about it, because he was the one in charge. Giving Odom the deputy mayor position was just to give him some authority, and also to increase his sense of belonging to the territory. After all, Odom was the deputy mayor, and it meant that the border town was his home. When the time came, how could he not command the dwarves and build the border town well? My lord is really skilled. Look at these dwarves' frightened expressions. I don't know how many years they have been chased. If they really have a foothold, I'm sure they will do their best to build fortifications. Lautner now admired William very much. After all, in front of an ordinary lord, It was difficult for them to share their power. William sat on a chair with Bramble in his arms. The cute briar and Bramble hugged his legs and didn't let go. Hearing Lautner's flattery, he shook his head. This isn't sharing power. I'm just giving the most suitable person to do the task that originally belongs to me. Lautner thought for a while and understood William's meaning. Then, he nodded and touched Bramble's little penis. Ignoring Bramble's threatening look, he left. At the same time, William, who finally had some free time, leveled himself up to level 15 and obtained 6 free attribute points. All attributes +1, including the hidden attribute of Charm +1. The free attribute points were still 3 points each for agility and strength. As for the other experience, I'll use them all on battle energy manuals and battle energy skills. William thought about it and started to level up his skills. There is a difference of 10 levels between his personal level and battle energy skills. Now that he was level 15, his battle energy skills had already leveled up to level 5. But his battle energy skills were merely level 2. Leveling it up to level 5 basically consumed all of his experience. Attributes panel. William was now level 15. Title: Border Town Lord. No attribute bonus. Race: Half-Elf Bloodline Potential. Legendary. Level 15 basic attributes plus 15%. Endowment. Handsome. Passive. Other than those in the Dark Camp, all other people, animals, and plants, other than enemies, will have a favorable impression of you that is equal to your charm. When you trade with other intelligent creatures, you will also have a certain discount. Endowment. Beginner life, 1 physical strength point equals 20 health points. Bloodline potential. Legendary. Basic attributes plus 15%. Level: 15 experience. 2333/15500 age. 16 health. 1,200 plus 300 plus 450. Stamina. 780 plus 100 plus 200. Basic attributes as follows. Power: 64 plus 8 plus 6. Physical strength: 42 plus 8 plus 10. Agility: 69 plus 8 plus 8. Intelligence: 40 plus 5 plus 5. Special attributes as follows. Charm: 58 luck. 3 Holy Dawn battle energy level. Legendary level. Level 5. 0/1600 experience. Battle energy value. 555 50 points recovery speed. 15 points per second. Special effects and skills activated are as follows. Special effect: any battle energy skill will be increased by 5%. Special effect: power plus 8, physical strength plus 8, agility plus 8, intelligence plus 5. Special effect: health plus 450. Special effect: stamina plus 200. Battle energy shield: the surface of the body can produce a battle energy shield equal to the battle energy value. It consumes 40 battle energy value per second. Basic defense is 150. If the attack power exceeds the upper limit of the defense, it can consume battle energy and even break the shield. After the shield disappears, it can be activated again after 5 seconds. Light of Dawn. On a certain battle energy skill, it can add 50% battle energy value and increase attack power by 210%. Cooldown of 26 minutes. Every 5 levels, it can increase attributes, special effects, skills, etc. The attributes added by battle energy have the effect of bloodline bonus. Blessing of the Elf God, passive, level 5 skill attribute. Long-range physical attack power increased by 17%, no consumption, no cooldown. Level 3 special effect. Additional 100 points of true damage. Fatal shot level 5 skill attribute. Consumes 150 battle energy value and can shoot 3 arrows in a row. If all the arrows hit the enemy, the first arrow will cause X 150% damage, the second arrow will cause X 170% damage, and the third arrow will cause X 190% damage. There is a certain chance of causing bleeding. Level 3 special effect. If all 3 arrows hit the head, the third arrow will cause 150% critical damage to the enemy. Special effect cooldown, 30 seconds. Cooldown, 5 seconds. Battle energy cut level 5 skill attribute. consumes 7-0 battle energy, and swings a sword energy forward. If it hits the enemy, it can cause X1 80% damage. There's a certain chance of causing bleeding. Level 3 special effect. Sword energy can repel and tear, depending on the situation. Cooldown, 3 seconds. Chapter 28. The continuous expansion of the town for 7 or 8 days had mobilized more than half of the idle people in the town. Anyway, as long as there was money, everything was not a problem. Cutting the mountain to build a road, leading directly to the iron mine and the mithril mine. The mithril mine was not occupied by the orcs, so William naturally had to dig. After all, no one would complain about having too much mithril. Expanding the streets and repairing the houses. Integrating all the buildings in the town, he wanted to plan 6 residential areas. Humans, half-elves, elves, dwarves, barracks, blacksmiths, some manufacturing rooms, and so on. Of course, entertainment and cultural facilities could not be lacking. The bathhouse had to be built. Many civilians had raised objections to him. There were no public bathhouses in the town, only a rainbow river. It did not matter if men bathed. They could find a place where no one was and strip naked before picking up soap, but women had to carry water back home, which was really troublesome. But most of the daily water was also taken from the Rainbow River. This feeling was very bad, as if there was something in their throats. What was worse was that many single men knew that they had done worse things in the river, such as using fish at the same time. William also wanted to build a beautiful central fountain located above the Rainbow River. The skills would be completed by mages and dwarves. The prosperity of the border town also made the civilians in the territory feel at ease. Many races coexisted in the town, but there were not too many communication barriers. After all, this was the legendary continent. They spoke in the common language. Although each race had their own language, this was also the language for communication within the race. As for whether there would be some inconveniences in living habits, William had tried his best to separate their residential areas. If there was really any inconvenience, then they could roll up their sleeves and fight. He could be the referee. The dwarves' construction talent was very good. If they did not pay attention to the aesthetic aspects, all the buildings they built would give people a sense of security. Their ability to build fortifications was the best in the God's continent. However, the dwarves were the best in terms of building. They were also very talented in researching new equipment. Although they could not be compared to the gnomes, they were equally outstanding. The scorching sun shone high. Insects and birds chirped. Whether it was in the town or in the dense forest, it did not give people a cool feeling. Because of the tidal air in the forest, it would only make people feel even more stuffy. The trees that were cut down to clear the road were not wasted. Instead, they were carried back to the town and used as materials to build houses. Odom alone carried the tree that required 3 people to wrap their arms around it and threw it on the ground, causing smoke and dust to rise. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, picked up the canteen, and poured the water on his golden hair, which shone dazzlingly under the sunlight. This was the 32nd tree he had carried back. It had to be said, in terms of hard labor, professionals had a greater advantage and earned more money. He was only wearing a white linen shirt, and his chest was slightly exposed. His strong muscles with scars were faintly discernible, giving off a kind of seductive feeling. He looked at William, who was drinking his juice. The construction of the town takes too much time. I don't even know when it will be completed. William touched Bear too, who was biting his pants. How long has it been? There are 4,300 residents in the town and 800 soldiers. Among them, 300 soldiers are always guarding the 2 mines as supervisors. Now, there are only 2,700 people who can follow the expansion of the town. According to the current number of people, even if we build houses day and night and finally build the fortifications, it will take about half a year. This is also because there are many professionals among the workers. Otherwise, the time will be dragged out even longer. Odom drank a mouthful of water and continued. I know what you're thinking. You want to build a perfect foundation and even an underground system for future expansion. But according to this construction method, there are too few people, and it will take a long time. William kicked away Bear 2, who was biting his shoes, and said bluntly, "I'll think of a way to buy a batch of slaves from the Black Lava Nation. How many gold coins are left in the town?" Odom's mouth twitched. The construction of the town was not free. Everyone had to pay wages. "Isn't there an iron mine?" "Recently, the iron mines and iron essence produced are enough to sell for more than 500 gold coins, together with the mithril." At this point, William and Odom were a little depressed. The mithril that the dwarfs had dug out in the past few years had all been refined, and the quantity was as much as 1680 kilograms. What kind of concept was this? This was a huge sum of money. Mithril was as light as a feather and as hard as a dragon's scales. It was a little exaggerated to say that mithril was a few times harder than steel, but its weight was less than half of steel. With this 1,680 kilograms of mithril and a skilled blacksmith, they could create 3,360 pieces of silver equipment, or they could become magic materials for mages. There were many uses. Anyway, 1 kilogram of mithril could be exchanged for at least 100 gold coins. In a place with less mithril, the value is higher. For a small place like the Black Lava Nation, which did not produce mithril at all and relied on importing it from other nations, if one really wanted to ask for a price, it was not impossible for 1 kilogram of mithril to be sold for nearly 150 gold coins. Even if there was a price, there was no market for it, and the iron mines could not be sold for a price. The name of the Iron Nation was very obvious. There were as many as 3 to 5 iron mines in the nation, and there was so much steel that they had to be thrown out. It was a really sad story. So this was the reason why William chose to go to the Black Lava Nation to trade. Now, the situation between the two nations was extremely tense. The old king of the Black Lava Nation was bedridden because of his injuries in his early years. He looked like he was about to go to hell. And this kind of situation made the Iron Nation have some bad ideas. They were preparing to start a war. Some key war resources would definitely not be sold to the Black Lava Nation. Even if there were private transactions between the nobles, the quantity was very small. So, the iron mines could be sold at a good price in the Black Lava Nation. But no matter how the prince of the Black Lava Nation fought for power, and no matter how ignorant and incompetent he was, when the City of Dawn revealed a treasure like mithril, it would attract the attention and greed of many people. "Why don't we carve some marks?" William did not understand. After Odom's explanation, he gradually understood. Odom had some unique techniques. He could print the symbols of other nations on the mithril. Among them, the most proficient was the symbol of the Lonely Mountain Empire. This method could make people think that the mithril was obtained from somewhere and not from the mithril mines. But if we really print the symbols of other nations, we can't sell too much mithril. Otherwise, it will arouse suspicion. William did not have a good idea at the moment. He could sell the mithril in other places, such as across regions. But he had neither time nor flying mounts. There were no teleportation formations or space doors in this broken place. He would definitely be robbed along the way. The place he appeared in now belonged to the beginner's village. Even the most powerful guy was only over level 60. If he really met someone, he could struggle and resist. If he really could not do it, and if he really wanted to kill everyone, William could also do something, but if he left the beginner's village and wandered around, even if Lautner fought to the death, he would not be able to protect him. "Lautner! Lautner!" William suddenly shouted in surprise. His excited expression made Odom take a few steps back. He thought that there was some dirty relationship between them that was beyond friendship. "Who said that we have to trade with humans? We can obviously trade with elves." William smacked his head. He had been a player for too long in his previous life. He had always used the lifestyle of a player and had forgotten the advantages brought by his identity. Although the border town was very far from the Dark Knight City, he knew that there was a bustling elven town more than 100 miles to the east. There were many Blackleaf elves living there. He could sell a portion of the mithril to those elves and use the gold coins to buy other resources in the human nations. It was more troublesome, but the safety factor was greatly increased. Chapter 29. Poor. This word ran through William's entire life. Even though William had been in the border town before, he didn't know if there was a gold mine here. After all, he was a player. It was okay to pay attention to some rare mines, but as for the gold mine, what was the use of paying attention to it? Could he rob it or dig it? There was no chance, but there was a possibility of the existence of a gold mine because the supermine in the Blackleaf Forest was not just for show. As long as they could really find a gold mine and completely control it, they could smelt gold and produce gold coins. As long as the gold content could reach 90%, it could be used in the entire legendary continent. It had to be said that the border town was lucky. The natural barrier that was more than 80 meters high was the key to preventing other human nations from invading. If they wanted to climb up from below, there were only some winding and steep cliffs. If a small army wanted to climb up from here, it would be like sending themselves to death. However, it was difficult to climb up and exhausting to go down. Other than using zip lines, handheld ladders, and walking on a mountain path, they could only rely on the leap of faith. After all, the Rainbow River had been formed for a long time. The waterfall formed by its fall had a great impact. The pool below was very deep, but it was not wide enough. There were solid rocks beside it. As long as they had the guts, one leap of faith, and they could easily go down the mountain. As for whether they were dead or alive, it all depended on the posture. Anyway, William had jumped many times before, but he didn't die, greater than over equal to 4 all O. But it was also because of the cliff that there was not much trade between the border town and the human nations. Other than the official trade, once a month, they could only rely on wandering caravans. But wandering merchants were also mercenaries. They would seek benefits at the edge of the human nations and would also take risks in the forests and grasslands. The most important thing was that not only were they merchants, but they would also play the role of robbers from time to time. Curry was the captain of a caravan. As a level 41 warrior, he had just entered the middle level. He led more than 30 members and climbed the winding and steep path. At the cost of losing a horse, they finally arrived at the border town. Coming to the top of the cliff, Curry looked at the plains in the north. His mind was open, and he wanted to write an obscene poem. Unfortunately, he smacked his lips and didn't say anything. "Boss, I heard that a group of elves came to the border town. They should be very rich, right?" The man who spoke smiled wretchedly. "Since you know they are elves, what else do you think? Even if they are not elves, you should have heard of the treatment that the caravans received when they came to the border town in the past, right?" Curry curled his lips. The wretched-looking man beside him sighed when he heard this. If this group of people were businessmen, they could also play the role of robbers. That border town was a gathering place for high-level criminals. Apart from a small number of civilians, good citizens who did not often commit crimes. That's right, people who didn't commit crimes often could be called good citizens in border town. The other civilians were all ferocious professionals. Back then, many caravans had risked their lives to come here to do business. Inside the small town, there was nothing to worry about. After all, there was a powerful mayor who could suppress all riots. But wasn't it a little too much to be robbed right after leaving the town? There were even many merchant groups that dared to resist and refused to hand over their goods and money. The grass on their graves was already more than 3 meters tall. Of course, all of this had something to do with the fact that the local civilians had been cheated by the caravans in the early days of the town's establishment. This had also led to fewer and fewer merchants coming to border town. Curry dared to come here because he had some information. The border town had changed its mayor, and a large number of pure-blooded elves had followed him here. The pure-blooded elves of the Blackleaf Forest. With them suppressing the town, the problem of public security should be greatly improved. This time, our main goal is to build a good relationship. The asking price can't be too high. If we can form a regular trade, we can definitely earn a lot of money. All of you follow behind me. Don't look around and don't speak. Otherwise, no one will be able to protect your lives. Curry said a few words to his brothers behind him and led the team to the town. William stood on the treetop and looked at the caravan. As early as when they were climbing the mountain, scouts had already discovered them. After all, he had already arranged for people to monitor all the mountain paths that could be used to climb up. Should we let Odom and the rest hide? Lautner, who was at the side, opened his mouth. "We are a neutral town. What does it matter if the dwarves are here? William shook his head and turned to Knox. "Just don't let them enter the town. Bring them to see me." "Yes, my lord." Curry glanced at the team of elfin warriors who had stopped them and couldn't help but swallow his saliva. Not mentioning anything else, for someone like him who rarely saw elves, it was really an eye-opener. First of all, not mentioning how good the weapons and equipment of these elves were, they looked really handsome, good-looking. Of course, these were all thoughts in their hearts. Curry and the rest didn't dare to show it. They could only secretly peep at these elves. Especially the strength of the elves. Curry didn't dare to underestimate them. Just this elfin guard named Knox in front of him made him feel that he didn't have absolute confidence in defeating him. As for the other 10 handsome elves, their eyes were also bright, and they had a kind of confidence that came from the bottom of their hearts. Curry even had a feeling that these elves in front of him could destroy his caravan. But all the nervousness disappeared with the arrival of a young man. William was wearing a slim, purple robe. His dark and shiny long hair draped over his shoulders. His pointed ears were exposed outside his hair, and his eyes were as dazzling as the moon. He didn't have any extra accessories on him, but the feeling he gave people was like a spring breeze, and their affinity for him increased. "Hello, I'm the lord of the border town, William Blackleaf." William held a small bear in his arms. There was no etiquette in his words, and he didn't care much about the affinity of these ordinary merchants, but Curry and the rest didn't dare to put on an act. When they heard William's greeting, they all patted their chests with their right hands and bowed slightly. "Greetings, Lord. May you live forever. May God be with you." William also smiled slightly. Curry didn't care about William's response, because when he heard William's name, his brain had already crashed. In addition, he saw many elfin guards just now, so he quickly organized his words and said respectfully, "My lord, my name is Curry, and I'm a caravan from the Black Lava Dukedom. My surname is too inferior, so I won't say it and dirty the lord's ears. And I'm here to do some business with the border town. For example, salt, cloth, sauces, and even some rare materials. I'll even do my best to buy whatever you want in the future." When the other members of the caravan heard this, they couldn't help but glance at their captain, as if wondering if their captain was gay. Did he have to bootlick like this? Didn't he know that a bootlicker would end up with nothing? William remained calm. He had been observing Curry's affinity for him, and he even had some doubts. He hadn't done anything, but Curry's affinity for him had increased to 500 points. What the hell was he going to do? Why did he feel like he had met a pervert? But William thought about Curry's respectful look. He seemed to understand that this guy should know from somewhere what his surname represented. Chapter 30. The Blackleaf Elves had different surnames. Only the royal family had the surname Blackleaf, named after the first 2 words of the Blackleaf Forest. And this was only after the Blackleaf Elves moved into the forest. Before the gods' continent was broken, the surname of this elven royal family was Dawn. Just like the battle energy that William cultivated, the first 2 words were the same. As for why the Elven King changed his surname, there are many rumors. Some people said that it seemed to be related to some secrets of the Blackleaf Forest. There were even rumors that the Blackleaf Forest had the sapling of the World Tree, but the Blackleaf Elves spread the news. The Elven King wanted his descendants to remember the humiliation of leaving the continent. He wanted them to remember the shame of living in the forest and not being able to appear on the continent. As for whether there was the idea of ruling the continent again, different people had different views. Anyway, humans still did not dare to attack the Elven Forest. Not only were the human countries fighting for territory, the orcs and demons had also brought them a lot of trouble. Under the rule of the royal family, the Blackleaf Elves rarely appeared in the eyes of humans. The surname of the Elven royal family was simply a legend to many ordinary people. There were too few records. Even the elves had become a legend in many remote areas. There were 3 elven kingdoms in the legendary continent. The Blackleaf Elves in the Blackleaf Forest in the south of the continent. The Moonlight Elves in the Moon Forest in the center of the continent. The Snow Elves in the Northern Ice Forest. 3 kingdoms, 3 elven royal families, and each kingdom had more than 10 million elves. These more than 30 million pure-blooded elves were the only elves left in the legendary continent. Compared to the billions of human empires and kingdoms, they could not be compared at all. This was also one of the reasons why the elves did not come out. Curry knew the surname of the Blackleaf elven royal family, which meant that he had at least come into contact with the elves and even knew some secrets. Thinking of this, William smiled and let Curry walk to the side with him. He said directly, "Those things you mentioned are small things. I just want to know, do you have the ability to buy slaves?" Slaves? Curry's eyes widened. He could not help but look at William a few more times. After all, he had never known that pure-blooded elves were interested in buying slaves. Because the elves are the race that worshipped freedom the most, the elves rarely restricted the freedom of other races, and they had never bought slaves. William shrugged his shoulders. There was a tinge of sorrow in his tone. "I'm buying slaves so that they can become commoners again. I want to develop my territory, so I need manpower. If you help me buy slaves, I will directly grant them the status of commoners. I only hope that they will help me build my territory. As for whether they stay or leave, I won't care." Curry suddenly understood and hurriedly nodded. "Sir Lord is kind-hearted. May the gods always bless you." At the same time, he said confidently, "Of course, what kind of slaves do you want?" That feeling was like he could buy whatever type of slave William wanted. William had to believe it. The traveling merchant teams on a legendary continent all had some power behind them. One of the people in the merchant teams might be nobles. After all, this was a form of training. Many great nobles did not want their children to become mercenaries or join adventurer teams to court death. Thus, they would throw their children into a caravan. After a few years, those who could survive and return to their families were basically all smart people. Of course, the children who could be thrown out to train were basically not core members of the family. Otherwise, they would not be favored by the great nobles. Facing Curry, who might be a noble, facing Curry, who might discover his identity, William did not mind putting on airs and scaring him. Professionals. Curry pondered for 2 seconds. "Sure. How much do you want?" William also pondered for 2 seconds. "What price?" It was very obvious. William still wanted to continue pretending. "It depends on the age, race, gender, type of profession, as well as the level of the profession. But most of them are professionals who have just entered the beginner level. Of course, there are no elves or half-elves. Elegant and powerful existences like the elves definitely cannot be treated as slaves. They should be born nobles." Curry was very experienced in this. He had done many things as a human trafficker. As for the latter explanation, William was too lazy to care. Were there any elven slaves in the warehouse? He really didn't. After all, it was a small duchy, and the slave traffickers did not dare to be arrogant enough to capture pure-blooded elves. Otherwise, if the elves in Blackleaf Forest found out, it would not just be revenge on the nobles. It would directly destroy the city and the country. Because for a long time after the pure-blooded elves left the forest, the humans thought that the elves had lost their power and everyone wanted to bully them. Many pure-blooded elves disappeared inexplicably. They were captured by the human slave traffickers and sold to the nobles. Among them, the elven girls were the most miserable. It was not that the royal family of Blackleaf Forest would not take revenge. Every time they found out about this, they would definitely choose to take revenge. Often, the nobles would also die very miserably. But this kind of warning was nothing to the nobles. There would always be nobles who would secretly carry out this kind of inhumane trade again. Hence, after tens of thousands of elves were cruelly abused, the elves in Blackleaf Forest really exploded. Within 3 days, 13 legendary elves destroyed 7 human duchies, 3 human kingdoms, and 1 human empire's important city was destroyed by a forbidden spell. That day, there were millions of casualties. From that day onwards, very few people dared to go to Blackleaf Forest to find trouble. As for whether the humans sought justice, very few people knew. Of the 13 legendary elves, 6 died one after another. They were buried under the Black Tree in Dark Night City. Their tombstones were covered with flowers. Their heroic deeds were sung by the elves. Their achievements would live on forever. There was no justice or kindness in this kind of thing. This was a war between races. To the Blackleaf elves, the actions of the 13 elves were heroes. To the humans who died innocently, they were demons. William seemed to be recalling something. Curry swallowed his saliva and did not dare to say a word. At this moment, he only wanted to slap himself a few times, as if he was blaming himself for talking nonsense. Because he also knew that dark history of swords being drawn. As for the half-elven slaves, there would definitely be unlucky half-elves who would be caught and turned into slaves. William sighed deeply. Warrior-type professionals below 25 years old, I want 500 people. Manufacturing professionals, blacksmiths, tailors, jewelers, engineers, and architects, I want 100 people each. Non-professionals, half male and half female. I want 3,000 slaves, aged 15 to 20 years old. 500 warrior-type professionals, originally 50 gold coins per person. Since the Lord is so generous, I will make it 30 gold coins. The price of the 500 manufacturing professionals is originally different, but 20 gold coins per person is enough. As for the 3,000 ordinary slaves, because they are too young, the lowest price is 5 gold coins per person. A total of 40,000 gold coins. If the Lord really wants them, you can give me 38,000 gold coins. This is already the lowest price I can promise. Curry was quite experienced in slave trading. As soon as William finished speaking, he had already finished calculating the price. He was so skilled that William could not help but feel sorry for those slaves. The Lord raised his eyebrows. Curry did not explain anything. This was really the lowest price. If he lowered the price any further, he would lose. As for the mages, both of them had a tacit understanding and did not mention it. How was this buying slaves? This was buying one's own father. However, William did not say much. He just patted his shoulder. 7 days later, bring the slaves over and bring back boxes of gold coins. Curry did not receive the deposit he wanted, but he looked into William's eyes and bowed. It's a pleasure working with you, Your Highness. When William heard these 2 words, he did not explain anything. He just smiled slightly and turned to leave. Curry saw this scene. The big stone in his heart finally fell into his stomach. He finally heaved a sigh of relief. He had bet correctly. The guy in front of him was definitely the Prince of the Elves. The problem of money, was it still a problem? Money is a big problem. William crossed his hands, his gaze gradually becoming dull. Chapter 31. Money is a big problem now. Have they left? William clapped his hands and asked Knox. Knox shook his hook axe and nodded. The caravan has already left, and they even left all the goods they brought behind, saying that they are for you, my lord. What a discerning young man. He's worth paying attention to. William smiled and waved his hand to let Knox send the cheap goods into the newly built warehouse. With so many slaves, the territory doesn't have that much money. Do we have to be ruthless when the time comes? Lautner gestured at his neck. William glanced at his skillful movements and shook his head. We naturally have to look at the long term when doing business. We have a lot of mithril on hand, so we could sell some. Tomorrow, follow me to the Blue Moon town near the Blue Moon Lake to sell some mithril. Blue Moon Lake, I don't think that's a good idea. Lautner gulped. William did not understand, so he cast a puzzled look over. After all, the Blue Moon Lake was a very familiar place to him. In his previous life, he often went there and did not encounter any problems. After all, when trading with elves, as long as one was handsome, one could get a discount. He was quite handsome in his previous life. There was nothing to say about his looks. He was qualified to be a male angel. He belonged to the unique category of handsome men. Unfortunately, he wasn't a harpy, so he didn't give those angels a chance to admire his exquisite features up close. But Lautner's next explanation made William's mouth twitch. He was a little dumbfounded. The Blue Moon Lake in the Blackleaf Forest was not far from here. It was only about 100 miles away. It was an elven town with more than 40,000 people. The entire town was formed by magically modified trees. The Blue Moon Lake was not just a lake. It was formed by dozens of lakes of different colors. They were orderly in height and layer upon layer, gradually forming a lake in the shape of a full moon. Every night, from a high vantage point, it looked like a full moon was embedded in the ground. Especially at night, Because of the high temperature of the lake, faint steam would appear, making the Blue Moon Lake even more beautiful and dazzling, like a fairyland. Not only were there Blackleaf elves in Blue Moon Town, but there were also 6,000 to 7,000 Moonlight elves. As for why there were 5,000 Moonlight elves here, it was because the little princess of the Moonlight elf royal family was here. 3,000 of the Moonlight elves were her personal guards, and the others had different responsibilities and tasks. In short, their main purpose was to accompany the little princess. According to the Blackleaf elf royal family, the current Blue Moon Town temporarily belonged to the Moonlight elf princess. But unfortunately, it was a coincidence. William actually had a grudge against this little princess. Do you think this is a melodramatic annulment? No. He was a half-elf, so he didn't have the right to be rejected. It was just that when William was young, he scared away a second chance that the little princess would never encounter in her life. Unicorn. What is a unicorn? This was not a white horse with a single horn. Instead, it was a mystical creature with a pair of beautiful wings, rainbows under its feet, and a single horn on its head. It could even defeat super magical beasts. This was a super creature that could rival colossal dragons. Back then, little William came to the Blue Moon Lake for a stroll. Unintentionally or unintentionally, he saw a winged pony approaching the little princess. Under normal circumstances, whether it was a human or an elf, being intimate with a magical unicorn would be considered lucky. It was no less than being personally blessed by the goddess of luck. However, little William dashed out crazily, as if he wanted to touch the pony. Hence, the unicorn flapped its wings and flew away. That was why the little princess of the Moonlight elves almost killed him with her 3,000 guards. Wait, she is the little Moonlight elf princess. Why is she in the Blackleaf Forest? William raised his eyebrows. Lautner saw that he avoided the main point and knew that he had lost his memory. He did not take this question seriously, but he could only reply, the Blackleaf Elves royal family has always had a marriage alliance with the Moonlight Elves royal family. This little princess is the representative of this marriage alliance. Of course, the marriage alliance between the Elves royal family is not as forceful as the marriage alliance between human nobles. We will not force any marriage. A marriage without love is simply locking two people in a suffocating graveyard. So, this little princess has been living here, waiting for her fated person. After all, our lifespans are very long. Then it must be very ugly. Why do you have to be so tactful? William curled his lips. There was a trace of disdain in his eyes. Wasn't it just a unicorn? Was there a need to hate him for a lifetime? He was going to ride a dragon in the future. No. For the first time, Lautner strongly objected. With a hint of longing in his voice, he said, the little princess is as beautiful as a goddess. Even when compared to your mother, she is not inferior. She has many suitors, and many princes have personally come to court her. Things like playing the harp under the moon, reciting poems, competing with swords and arrows. In short, after so many times, no one has won her heart. Of course, compared to your mother, this little princess still lacks a lot of temperament. Oh, William nodded thoughtfully. He did not care about this executive who wanted to be his stepfather. He only knew that it was impossible. But he had no way to stop Lautner from fantasizing. He had been to Blue Moon Town in his previous life, but he did not know that there was this little princess at Blue Moon Lake. Because Blue Moon Town did not have any forbidden areas for the elves, but for the chosen ones like them, the security was very tight. It was more likely that at that time, the little princess had already married or returned to the Moonlight Forest. For the players, all the other beauties who were married would lose their attractiveness to them. Except for the single women who were extremely beautiful. It could not be helped. Male players were so direct. After all, the married beauties could not provide them with books. What else was there to miss? Then let's go to Blue Moon Lake tomorrow. William clapped his hands and decided. Lautner's mouth twitched. Don't you need to change places? I'm afraid that once we enter the town, you won't be able to come out. Don't worry, don't worry. William patted his shoulder and ignored him. Even Lautner did not understand such a magical creature like the unicorn. But William knew a real unicorn, legendary bloodline. One of its endowments was invisibility. The second endowment, mind reading. William definitely did not really scare the unicorn away. Maybe it was so scared that it became invisible. After all, if the unicorn really chose to get close to a young lady, it would not choose to give up easily. That unicorn just did not want others to see it or even get close to it. Otherwise, would that proud princess usually let it go so easily? How could it be? Think about her 3,000 personal guards. Think about her 500 personal guards. That biological father of hers. Just how spoiled had he become? Thinking about this, William felt very angry. If he had the chance, he would definitely point at the Moonlight Elfin King and scold him. Parents who spoiled their children were not good parents. He could completely bear this pressure for the little princess. If there were no accidents, this princess, she would have already flown away with the unicorn and regarded all men as pigs. After all, she could use the ability of the unicorn to easily detect the dirty minds of those men. No matter if it was a male human or a male elf, when they were courting a mate, they would inevitably have some perverted mental fluctuations. And this kind of mental state was extremely dirty to the unicorn. So, the young lady who could communicate with the unicorn would definitely be able to detect this kind of situation. Think about it. All these handsome elfin princes looked elegant, but in the end, they were all psychopaths. Then how could this little princess, who had never been in love, never held hands, and never kissed, not have a psychological shadow? Basically, it could be said, this Princess Yushi, who had obtained the unicorn in advance, would not be able to escape this lifetime of loneliness. Or in other words, any young lady who could obtain the favor of a unicorn would live like this for the rest of their lives. If William did not know that the unicorn was not male or female and could not transform into a human, he would have suspected that the unicorn was some kind of perverted beast that had cursed those beautiful young ladies. Chapter 32. The day before heading to Blue Moon Town, William used Mithril to upgrade his epic-level inner armor. The effect was obvious and it was much stronger. Blessing of Love quality, epic type, defense type equipment that can grow material. Mithril, branches and leaves of the world tree, adamantine, etc. Producer, Alice Blackleaf Health, plus 600 stamina, plus 200 power, plus 10 physical strength, plus 15 agility, plus 12 intelligence, plus 8 durability, 780/780 weight, 0. 3 kg defense. Within the protective area of the inner armor, attacks below 210 points will not be able to cause damage to the inner armor and the user. Only attacks that exceed the upper limit will cause effective damage and reduce the durability. Elemental protection. Passive, any elemental damage will be reduced by 15%. Blessing of Love. Passive when the user's health drops below 10%. He will receive the Blessing of Love and instantly recover 60% of his health. Cooldown of 25 minutes. Usage requirement. William Blackleaf usage requirement. 40 points of strength growth requirement. Place 1 kilogram of mithril and 1 kilogram of adamantine on the inner armor, and it will automatically absorb and evolve. Introduction. This is an inner armor that a mother personally made for her son. It not only contains great maternal love, but also a mother's best wishes. Treasure the inner armor in your hands, child. Phew. William blew gently, and the lost luster of the mithril turned into silver sand and gently dispersed. The inner armor, which had a slightly restrained purple light, did not become heavier. It was still 0.3 g. Actually, to William, that little bit of weight was not much. But this epic-level inner armor had very strong attributes, although it only had 2 passive skills. Whether it was the elemental protection or the Blessing of Love, they were rare and would be more important in the later stages of the game. After all, they rarely faced mages now. Mages were not considered great mages yet. Now, they were just younger brothers. But in the future, younger brothers would be walking magic cannons without elemental defense or elemental damage reduction. It would be really troublesome. Even if they did not die, they would be badly injured. In particular, the elemental protection could reduce all elemental damage. Although it was not effective against unconventional magic attacks, it was still very important. Because other than mages playing with elemental damage, close combat also had elemental damage. Although they could not be compared to spellcasters in all aspects, it was still a necessary process for close combat. The first profession at level 10 is to learn battle energy and become a beginner professional. At level 40, one would have to go through the second profession advancement. Professions would then awaken attributes, including metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, lightning, and so on. As for space and time, only the protagonist NPCs and the lucky ones can obtain them. William raised his eyebrows. He was not in a hurry to level up. Recently, although he was expanding the border town, he could receive daily territory missions every day. For example, cleaning up the rich werewolves nearby, helping an old man pass on a message. Cough, such a task was impossible. Even if there was, as the Lord, it was impossible for him to stoop down and do it. Impossible. In any case, it was still possible to earn tens of thousands of EXP per day. After all, the territory was still developing, and there were not too many quests. But William did not level up because he still lacked a sub-occupation. Gods did not limit the number of subclasses, nor did it restrict what subclasses they could be. Regardless of whether it was a life class or a combat class, there were no restrictions. You could choose your main profession: warrior, subprofession; mage, subprofession; archer, subprofession; cannon master, subprofession; summoner, etc. Afterward, I'll delete my account and start over. Every time there was a combat-type sub-occupation, the experience to level up would almost double. Unless the sub-occupation was not leveled up, then this sub-occupation would be useless, but every time there was a combat-type sub-occupation, the difficulty of the change of occupation mission would also double. This was for sure. Moreover, the specialization required the main and sub-occupation secret manuals to be maxed out. This meant that as long as you learned one more sub-occupation, the experience to level up would definitely double. If you did not level up, then you would not be able to level up. But this was also relatively speaking. For those top players with skills, operations, and awareness, professional players, and so on, they would basically choose a combat-type sub-occupation. Because the difficulty of the leveling up experience and the change of occupation mission would not really make them fall behind the first echelon. As for two combat-type occupations, if there was a certain degree of harmony, there would even be fusion skills. If the other skills were better coordinated, they would definitely be able to play out different godly operations. It could almost be said, it was precisely because of this variety of sub-occupations that the arena of the gods had gradually become the most valuable arena in all the games on the market. But it was precisely because of this variety of sub-occupations that it was also unable to let people truly stand at the top of the arena. But for ordinary players, generally, they could only choose a lifestyle-type sub-occupation. After all, this was exclusive to the poor and unlucky. Saying too much would make one cry. In his previous life, William had chosen the main occupation of a warrior and the sub-occupation of a gatherer. As for those archer skills, he had learned them from other sources. Although he had finally become a legendary professional, he was not considered the top. And this time, he was going to learn a magic profession. However, this magic profession was very difficult to learn, extremely difficult to learn. Although he did not have to wait until level 40 to awaken his attributes to be able to learn, the key was that he could not find the existence of this kind of magic. He had originally wanted to go to the Dark Knight City to try and find someone to learn from, but he did not expect that the person who could teach him the sub-occupation was in the border town. Moses Holy Vein, who made a living by divination in the town and ate and drank for free. In the town, the blacksmith Old Hank and the hunter Eric, father and son. Their bloodline potential is epic level. Now, their level should be around level 40 or 50. They belong to the NPCs of the hidden profession. Their strength is superb, but they are not the top. William had a deep impression of the two. As for the blacksmith Old Hank, as an epic level holy hammer warrior, his sub-occupation is blacksmith. Not only does he have forging skills that are not inferior to the dwarves, but he also has an abnormally mysterious identity. After the border town was occupied by the troops of the Iron Nation, he could even remain neutral and had an aloof status. Then, he left with the Iron Nation and opened a powerful blacksmith shop. William still remembered that he had reserved a weapon, but it ended up being reserved until the second year of the open beta. Hence, he casually sold that weapon to the novice rich player in the second year and earned a lot of money for his living expenses. It was a pity. Then, the rich player offered a reward. If not for the game's confidentiality policy, he would have blacklisted himself online. As for the hunter Eric father and son, the father is a shadow ranger, and the son is a shadow assassin. Both of them are unlucky people who escaped from the shadow assassin organization. After the two of them left the border town, they fought with the shadow assassin organization many times and killed many assassins who came to kill them. Their reputation grew, but then they disappeared. I don't know if they went into hiding again or were killed, but these are all trash. The God's continent has never lacked talented people. There are geniuses everywhere who have not grown up. According to the words of the players, there are many legendaries and epics are like dogs. Of course, as long as they have a good hidden profession and good equipment, they are very powerful. They can't be considered trash. But compared to the all-rounder great enchanter Moses, they are really low. William really wanted to complain. Legendary, epic, and grandmaster bloodlines are equivalent to training talents in this world. For example, the geniuses and geniuses of the God's continent. But geniuses who can't grow up can only die. I feel that I have finally explained the problem of bloodlines. Moses, one of the successors of the magic sanctuary, disciple of the warlock, the betrayer of the gods, all-rounder great enchanter, a walking super AoE. If there are no accidents, this guy's level should exceed the upper limit of the version. William was silent. Moses was the disciple of the magic sanctuary's president. Of course, he had a legendary bloodline. His talent was extremely powerful, and it was definitely not a handsome talent. Maybe after he was born, he would have an amazing talent like Warlock God. His luck would be off the charts. He would be a thorn in the flesh of unlucky people like William. The most important thing was that he was proficient in all-round magic. He was even more powerful than his teacher. What was all-rounder? Elemental, metal, wood, water, fire, ice, earth, wind, and thunder. Space-time, time-space. Mystery, holy light, darkness. Mental, soul, willpower, similar to telekinesis. Side, summoning, death, foresight, and so on. In short, there were only magic that one could not think of. There was no magic that he did not know. That was right. He was that awesome. It's a pity that this guy, who could run horses on a magic shield and dare to fight against the existence of the magic sanctuary, died in the end. William could not help but sigh. I don't know how charismatic my father is. He can make this guy come here to hide? William scratched his head. Anyway, he did not believe that this kind of existence needed the protection of his father, because Moses was a true legend. He was a famous legend in the three empires. That should be Moses. He shouldn't be a legendary great enchanter now, right? William stroked his chin and pondered. Unknowingly, the Lord's smile gradually became perverted. Chapter 33. Originally, the expansion and construction of the town should have been in full swing. There should have been sweating civilians everywhere. But it was a pity that the weather was bad today. It was raining cats and dogs. William was wearing a long, purple robe. He held an umbrella and walked on the bluestone path. Some of the workers who were hiding from the rain and chatting could not help but shiver when they saw his gaze, because they felt that their afternoon salary was going to be gone because of this rain. Humph, isn't it just raining? Why did the construction stop? William glanced at Knox, who was beside him. My lord, is this a little bit of rain? Knox dejectedly adjusted his helmet. Ignoring the clanking sounds on his head, he pointed at the cold hailstones on the ground. Who knows? This is the subtropical zone. How can it be hailstones? The corners of William's mouth twitched. He was just about to look for Moses when it suddenly started raining cats and dogs. The closer he got, the heavier the rain became. There was even hail. It was as if the heavens were stopping him from going out. And if there were no accidents, Moses, who had the ability to predict, seemed to know what he was going to do. That was why he caused an anomaly in the heavens and the earth, and caused a very cool hail rain. But this small obstacle could not prevent William from looking for him. Not long after, he walked to the door of a fortune-telling hut and waved his hand at Knox. "You can go back first. I'm going to fortune tell for tomorrow's trip." "Yes, my lord." Knox looked at him and nodded. In his heart, he felt that his lord still had some intelligence. He also knew that it was very likely that he would not be able to return. Bang, bang. William knocked on the door. No one responded. Bang, bang. No one was there yet. Bang, 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 bang. Creak. A feminine young man with long silver hair opened the door. His eyes were confused, and there was a trace of saliva at the corner of his mouth. He looked past William and looked around. Then he suddenly understood. "Io, my lord, what kind of hailstones hit you here? It's really strange. How can there be hailstones in this damn place?" The corners of William's mouth twitched. He knew that this guy was a B*TCH, but he did not expect him to be this B*TCH. Moses was one of the few beings in version 1.0 who had exceeded his level by too much. During the first year of the open beta, he had never cast a spell beyond level 69. He had been pretending to look down on all the players as if he were a hidden big shot. As for him, he was just a big shot. "Moses, you're sleeping in the middle of the day. Do you still want to do business?" William closed his umbrella and walked into the dark house. Inside, there were many magical items hanging in a mess. Crystal balls, gems, and strange ornaments were everywhere. At the same time, there were also some murals on the walls, and even some incomprehensible magic symbols. And the only chair for guests was occupied by a black cat that refused to die. Moses looked extremely young and had an almost feminine handsomeness. There was a trace of confusion in his eyes as he yawned. "I don't have any business to begin with. If I don't do business for half a year, I'll be able to eat for a year. As long as your lordship's territory isn't destroyed, I plan to accompany your lordship until I die." William pondered for 2 seconds and patted his shoulder. "Help me divine if my journey to Blue Moon Town will be smooth. Come on." Moses got up to get the crystal ball, but when he turned around, William used his insight. He did not have to worry about being discovered. It was a skill exclusive to players. Even if the god of creation was here, he would not be able to detect it. Moses' Hollowvein race. Human bloodline potential. Legendary occupation. Level. Health. All right, other than bloodline potential and race, everything else was a question mark. But fortunately, he was handsome. His endowment was awesome. The first time they met, he had left a very good impression. After the prompt sounded, Moses' impression of him increased by 80 points. Not bad. This was a good start. "Stretch out your hand and hold it with me on the crystal ball." Moses picked out a light blue crystal ball from among the many crystal balls and placed it on the table. William silently placed his hands on the crystal ball, and Moses' hands covered his hands. A cool feeling passed through his hands and entered the crystal ball. But it was the comfortable feeling that passed through his body that made William shiver. He glanced at Moses and then looked at the glowing crystal ball. He felt that there was something fishy about it. When he was a player, he had also done divination. But players did not have a future, so he could not divine anything. But a fortune teller did not need to hold his hands. There was no such trick. Could it be that the rumors about Moses were true? He liked men. Many illusions appeared on the crystal ball. William could not understand it. Even though he had been reborn, he could not understand it. If he could understand it, the fortune teller would become a cornerstone in the God's continent. Moses carefully looked at the illusions on the crystal ball. After a few minutes, he let go of his hands and licked his lips. "I don't see anything bad. It's smooth sailing. There are no benefits or disadvantages. Can I change something? For example, get some benefits?" William was puzzled. "No, I can only tell you if it's good or bad luck. It won't work if I say it out loud. And with your current strength, you won't be able to change anything." Moses twirled his fingers around his long hair a few times. He sat on the chair and shook his head. "I see." William nodded. He did not ask any more questions. He took out 5 gold coins from his pocket and slammed them on the table. Moses happily accepted it. He stood up and said to William, "My lord, We welcome you to visit us again. Ahem, Moses. William glanced at the black cat, whose level could not be determined. He carefully carried it and placed it on the table. Then he sat down. The black cat crawled onto Moses' lap and let its master ravage its little head. At this moment, Moses seemed to have heard William's words. He was puzzled. My lord, is there anything else? I won't go anywhere with you. I can only predict the future. I have no combat power. I can't even kill a chicken. No combat power, Moses. An enchanter who can't kill a chicken? William's heart skipped a beat. He organized his words in his mind before saying, Ahem, I heard from others that you seem to have inherited knowledge about soul magic. Moses' expression did not change. He was expressionless, as if he did not understand. William continued, You know that I'm a half-elf, but I have so many pure-blooded elfin guards. That proves that I'm a royal elfin. Moses raised his eyebrows and looked at William. So, Your Highness? Pot. William stood up and slammed the table. He shouted, Someone told me that you would teach me the best soul magic. Moreover, have you forgotten your promise? Have you forgotten what you promised me? Have you forgotten that someone told you that you promised me the best soul magic? What are skirt? Moses was really dumbfounded this time, but William had already stretched out his hand, as if waiting for him to hand over something. The corners of Moses' mouth twitched. He did not believe that William could see through his identity, but he felt that he had been tricked. So he asked, Your Highness, how did you know that I have inherited soul magic knowledge? He was too embarrassed to be angry with William. But what had he promised? Why did he not know? Although William was very afraid, he continued to bluff. I think you should know where I got this information from, especially why you're here. Moreover, I'm a lord. In the future, your fortune-telling shop will be under my protection. Moses pondered for a while. He seemed to have thought of something. He threw the black cat to the side and decisively said, I can give it to you, but you have to promise me something. Then, I'll give you the most complete soul magic inheritance knowledge. Otherwise, it's very possible that you'll lose some skills. William stroked his chin. TSK, there's a condition, but you can tell me what it is. Not yet. Moses told him to wait patiently. When he returned to his bedroom, he took out a brand new magic scroll and placed it on the table. William glanced at it. There was nothing wrong with it. It was a soul magic inheritance scroll that had just been created. It was called Saint's Soul Magic. It even had the producer's signature. Chapter 34. Moses was in a dilemma. He wanted to tell William, No, it wasn't me. I didn't. But after thinking for a long time, he chose to hand over the Saint's soul magic to the second-generation Lord. What was William doing just now? Of course, he was gambling. He was gambling that his father and Moses had some relationship. He might be able to get something from Moses, but he did not think that their relationship would be very good. But in general, even if the two of them fell out, based on his judgment of Moses' character in his previous life, Moses would not attack him. But when the border town was flattened in his previous life, Moses did not do anything. That was enough to understand that Moses would not hurt him, but he would not spend a lot of effort to help him either. William wasn't very important to Moses. He just wanted to hide himself. The border town was flattened. At most, he would find another place to live, but everything had a good start. After William gained benefits from Moses, he believed that other people would be able to solve it better. After all, in this world, there should be no one who knows them better than me, right? As a tombstone-level player who had been reborn, William specialized in all kinds of history and dug up all kinds of epic-level and above NPCs. He had long memorized the legendary life experiences of Moses. Could it be that he really left some letters for this little prince and wanted William to gain some benefits from me? Moses suddenly thought of the previous lord with a stubble beard. He pouted. Didn't he just trick you? He might not die. He did not know how this guy had managed to get the elfin princess. Before he had left such dirty tricks. Moses could not help but imagine. As an all-round mage, Moses was even more curious that he could not see through William's inner thoughts. He could not help but be interested, especially since William was quite handsome and suited his aesthetic standards. Of course, this was not the main point. There were too many good-looking men, but there were too few that he truly admired. In short, Ever since this fellow was almost tricked to death, the soul in his body seems to have become more interesting. Moses yawned and gently waved his hand, closing the wooden door. He waved his hand, and the black cat jumped into his arms. It followed him to the bed to take a nap. Normal mages naturally had to specialize in all kinds of magic at all times, even without rest. But to Moses, it was too easy to practice magic. Elemental magic? Oh, metal, wood, water, fire, earth, ice, wind, thunder, space-time magic? Oh, space and time, the other magicians thought. Oh, what? Oh, that's it. Why don't you practice meditation? Lance, shouldn't magic be learned after seeing it once? All the mages in the gods' continent were dead. In any case, to Moses, no matter what spell it was, he could master it with a single point. In fact, as long as he was proficient enough, he could even cast forbidden spells instantly. Ubu's forbidden spell was more or less the same. Therefore, it was impossible for Moses to live the same life as other mages. Of course, this also had something to do with the curse placed on stasis, which made it difficult for him to study other spells. 2 more years. Moses sat on the bed and looked at his naked upper body in the mirror. It was covered in a dark red curse. Those strange symbols were constantly flashing with a frightening red light. It was extremely terrifying. It was almost impossible to imagine what kind of curse he had encountered. But this was still how the curse looked after it was weakened. When he had first escaped from the magic sanctuary, he had been covered in curses from head to toe. There was not even a trace of skin. It was also then that he had come to Border Town. In short, this curse not only suppressed his power, but it also made him suffer from pain in his soul. It was as if it wanted to obliterate his soul. And because it was too painful, and because this curse wanted to obliterate my soul, it made me study a deeper level of soul magic. Holy soul magic is not as simple as it sounds. You call me a traitor of God. You punished me, tortured me, abused me, and completely disregarded whether I was willing or not. Moses thought of his master and could not help but sneer. He hugged the black cat in his arms and yawned as he went back to sleep. The grudge between Moses and the magic sanctuary was not something that needed to be resolved now. Apart from wind and thunder, nature element magic, metal, wood, water, fire, earth, and ice were all ordinary spells. As long as one awakened at level 40, they could easily learn them. Beginner mages could only use common spells, such as fireballs and water arrows. They could not be considered elemental spells. They were all basic spells. Wind and thunder required some twists and turns. However, as long as one could awaken these 2 attributes, it would not be too difficult to find such a mentor. It could not be considered a hidden profession. It was not that nature element magic was not good enough. If one could master any type of magic, they would be very powerful. It was just that it was a bit common soul, willpower, and illusion were all mental element magic. They were all hidden professions. Furthermore, Moses had personally made an inheritance scroll. It had actually reached the legendary grade. Holy Soul Magician Inheritance Scroll Grade. Legendary requirements. Bloodline potential must not be lower than epic rank. There were 2 ways to learn a profession. The first was to find a mentor to learn magic, skills, and so on. However, whether it was battle energy, magic, or skills, they all had levels. If one wanted to learn better skills, they would naturally need to spend more money. They might even need to increase the favorability of the mentor, or even see if the mentor was qualified. Players usually follow the version to increase the favorability of the mentor, or use money to buy skills and secret manuals. The second way was the inheritance scroll. One would place everything on the scroll. As the level of the scroll increased, the skills of the corresponding level would be slowly activated. The level of the scroll was determined by the level of the skills, battle energy, or magic contained in the scroll. Although William did not know how much Moses had invested in this scroll, the Holy Soul magic must be very powerful. At least, it was not weaker than the Watchman of Dawn. William gently tore the inheritance scroll into pieces in his bedroom. An indescribable blue light surged into his body. In an instant, a comfortable feeling spread throughout his body like a climax. The energy in his brain continued to expand, making his consciousness clearer and his senses more sensitive. It was the purest soul energy. A ball of magic gradually formed in his body. This was his magic points. At the same time, two types of energy flowed in his body. They were battle energy and magic. Both of them did not interfere with each other. They had their own paths. Ding dong. You have successfully changed your occupation. You are now a beginner holy soul magician. Ding dong. Your basic attributes have all increased by 10. Ding dong. Your intelligence has increased by 10. Ding dong. You have activated the beginner magic endowment. 1 point intelligence equals 1 point of magic attack. Ding dong. As your occupation is a holy soul magician, every time your character levels up, you will gain an additional 2 free attribute points. Every level up will gain 8 free attribute points. Holy Soul Magic Level. Legendary Level. Level 1. 0 out of 100 Magic Points. 300 points recovery speed. 10 points per second special effect. Your magic resistance increases by 1%. Special effect. Power +2. Physical strength +2. Agility +2. Intelligence +4 special effect. Health +200 special effect. Magic attack increases by 3% life sacrifice. You can extract the soul of a weak enemy, health below 10%, to recover 10% of their health points. Distance, within 3 meters casting speed. Instant cooldown, 5 minutes, Holy Soul Magician Skill, Tree Spirit Control Level. Level 1, 0 out of 100 experience, skill attribute. You can control an enemy who is in a weak state, health below 10%. After the control, the enemy's health points will recover to 50%. Consumption. 50 points of magic points casting speed. Instant cooldown. None limitation. You can only control one person limitation. The higher the bloodline potential, the higher the chances of failure. The higher the enemy's level is, the higher the chances of failure. Limitation. If you successfully enslave an enemy, you have to use spirit control once a day to increase the imprint. Otherwise, the chances of betrayal will increase. If you enslave an enemy for a long time, it will form a permanent imprint. Spirit Tentacle Level. Level 1, 0 out of 100 experience, skill attribute. A pair of spirit tentacles will suddenly emerge from the ground and grab the enemy, immobilizing them for 3 seconds. Weakness. The higher the bloodline potential, the higher the chances of failure. Distance, within 10 meters casting speed. Instant consumption, 30 points of magic points cooldown. 30 seconds, spirit shock wave level. Level 1, 0 out of 100 experience, skill attribute. With yourself as the center, a spirit shock wave will be produced, causing 100 plus, 150% X intelligence, damage to enemies within 5 meters. It will also cause a 2 to 3 meter knockback effect and 10% chance of causing a 3-second stun. Casting speed. Instant consumption. 50 points cooldown. 3 minutes, ding dong. Will the Holy Soul Magician and Guardian of Dawn create a new skill tree? William narrowed his eyes. Yes, he had waited for a long time for this skill fusion. The reason why he chose soul magic as his secondary occupation was because he had seen such a powerful combination of 2 occupations in his previous life. Holy Soul Skill, Tree Holy Soul, Enchantment Level. 1, 0 out of 100 experience, skill attribute. You can enchant weapons and arrows, increasing 150% X intelligence, damage to the soul. Consumption, 3 points of magic points cooldown. None. Holy Soul Ambush Level. 1, 0/100 experience, skill attribute. When your arrows or sword energy hit the enemy, you can use the Holy Soul Bag to cover your entire body. You can cross space to attack the enemy and cause 180 plus, 130% X strength, physical damage. Distance, within 40 meters consumption. 30 points of magic points cooldown. 5 seconds, I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it. This is it. Life Sacrifice, Spirit Control, and Holy Soul Ambush. William could not control himself anymore. There was no other reason. There were too few legendary soul magic. Normal soul magic was already very rare, but it was far from being so powerful. But holy soul magic simply surpassed it in all aspects. Life sacrifice was even more powerful. In this game world where there were no large-scale healing spells, life sacrifice was a godly skill. It could be said that there were not many soul mages in the entire legendary continent who had this skill. Not to mention, they had William's close combat ability. And after Holy Soul ambush hit the enemy, he could choose to travel through space as a soul. His physical body would appear in front of the enemy again to attack. This godly skill, whether it was for attacking or escaping, was excellent to the extreme. He vaguely remembered that he had only seen this godly skill once in his previous life. It was when he went back in time. It was a skill that belonged to a legendary expert in the Second Era. And in this era, there was no one who had the chance to learn this skill because he had never seen it before. William did not expect himself to be so lucky. And Soul Shock Wave, Soul Tentacles, Holy Soul Enchantment, even Spirit Control, a godly skill that had a ridiculous probability. In short, these soul magic skills were extremely practical support and control skills. More importantly, he did not expect that one of the special effects of Holy Soul magic could actually increase all magic resistance. It was simply too much. Although the current special effect was very low and could only increase all magic resistance by 1%, when the level increased, the effect was extremely significant, because endowment, ability, and equipment that could increase all magic resistance were extremely rare. This special effect was like picking up a growth-type legendary equipment, just that it took a long time to form. I have to say that I've gone further and further on the path of a legendary boss. William looked at his attributes happily. He was a level 15 noob. He did not have any other defensive equipment. Just the epic inner armor alone had his health points reaching 3,021. How could he be considered terrifying? If he used mithril to create a set of armor, his health points would definitely exceed 5,000. It cannot be helped. This was a legendary boss. Flesh, high defense, and resistance to beatings. This was the basic respect that a legendary boss had for the players. No matter what occupation this legendary boss belonged to, when facing the players, the boss must be able to withstand beatings. Chapter 35. As a legendary boss, William did not have much need for his current equipment, because beginner-level equipment was a transitional form. Ever since he had the mithril mine, William could be a little rich, but he was still not interested in wasting materials to make some low-level equipment. After all, William understood that as long as he did not seek death in the short term, it would be difficult for him to die under Lautner's protection, and his leveling speed would not be too slow, so there was no need to make any equipment. Although any equipment could be decomposed and recycled, it would be good if he could recycle 1 gene of mithril from 10 gene of equipment. But he had to make weapons. When he had obtained the mithril mine, he had asked Odom and Lautner to work together to make 3 weapons for him. They were a long sword, a bow and arrow, and a short sword. Lautner's secondary occupation was also a blacksmith. Odom and Lautner's secondary occupations were blacksmiths. One was a blacksmith grandmaster, while the other was a blacksmith master. Their secondary occupations were far beyond their middle-level main occupations. After all, life occupations and combat occupations could not be compared. Moreover, NPCs and players were different. They did not have experience points, so they could only rely on practice to become proficient in life occupations. Odom had been fleeing for so many years, and most of the time, he would choose to live in some mines. And his hobby was to play with iron. It had been more than 40 years since he was born. He had probably been playing with iron since he was young, and had been playing for 40 years. Wasn't a pair of Kirin arms terrifying? 2 Kirin arms in an epic level bloodline. No matter what, he had reached the level of a blacksmith grandmaster. Beginner, intermediate, advanced, master, grandmaster, legendary. Life occupation level. The reason why William asked them to work together was to let Lautner be in charge of the design and Odom be in charge of the attributes. After all, the dwarven blacksmith's items were far more practical than aesthetic. But William was a very handsome half-elf. The sword had to be handsome. After all, Whether it was strong or not was a matter of the version. Whether it was handsome or not was a matter of life. Dawn's sword quality, gold level, beginner creator, Lautner and Odom heavy hammer materials, mithril, iron essence, etc. Attack power, 180, 310 power, plus 7 agility, plus 5 charm, plus 3 length, 148 cm weight, 5. 6 kg usage requirement, 90 strength for one hand, 60 strength for both hands. Usage requirement, beginner professional special effect, has a laceration effect. 30% chance to cause bleeding damage to the enemy, losing 50 HP every second for 8 seconds. Special effect, battle aura skill attack power increased by 20%. Bow of Dawn quality, beginner gold level, beginner created by Lautner and Odom heavy hammer materials, mithril, ironwood, berserker bear's tendon. Attack power, 160, 350 strength plus 3 agility plus 7 charm plus 3 length, 110 cm weight, 3. 8 kg usage requirement, strength 70 and above. Requirement, novice professional special effect, headshot damage increased by 30%. Special effect, 30% chance to repel or knock down the enemy. Dagger of Dawn quality, beginner gold level, beginner created by Lautner and Odom heavy hammer materials, mithril, iron essence, etc. Attack power, 160, 330 strength plus 5 agility plus 7 charm plus 3 length, 33 cm weight, 2. 1 kg usage requirement, strength 60 and above. Requirement, novice professional special effect, increases base attack power by 30% when attacking from behind. Special effect, has a laceration effect, 20% chance to cause bleeding damage to the enemy, losing 50 HP every second for 5 seconds. It was a 3-piece Dawn set, and all of them were beginner gold grade equipment. Dark gold and even epic grade equipment could be forged. However, to Odom, just mithril and iron essence were not enough for him to forge equipment that surpassed gold grade. At the beginner stage, this kind of gold grade equipment was already very good. The 3 did not have set attributes, but the long sword and dagger had a stackable laceration and bleeding effect. To ordinary soldiers, it was like an orc who had done something wrong when he was young and was about to receive a baptism of fatherly love from his father who was holding a mace. It could be seen that the orc's cruelty was probably related to domestic violence, and the aristocratic feudal system still saved the commoners. Oh, epsilon asterisk. In the game of gods, other than shield bearers who specialized in using shields, the other warriors would usually choose 2 weapons. The main weapon was responsible for the main damage, while the secondary weapon was used for sneak attacks and blocking. Of course, the secondary weapon was also a good way to deal damage, but the key was the technique. As for whether or not they could successfully block, that depended on the individual's luck and technique. Many novice players saw the NPCs play this way, so they also played the same way, and then it was over. William had played the game for 10 years, and he was very good at using 2-handed weapons, so he specially ordered an extremely short dagger. When he had nothing to do, he could pretend to be an assassin or something. After all, he liked to play Assassin's Creed, and he deeply understood the essence of the assassin's unparalleled group battle. As for the magic staff, was that something that he should touch? The reason why he learned this kind of soul magic that was similar to auxiliary control was that he did not want to touch the magic staff. I put all the accumulated experience into the Saint Soul magic and leveled up to level 5, and the other skills all leveled up to level 3. There's nothing left. William tugged at his hair. This game was a big user of experience. The need for experience to level up was especially large. Battle energy and magic secrets were also fundamental, and they also needed experience, but skills needed experience even more. If he did not have this territory and could easily receive various territory missions, he would simply be killed by the experience. If he died, then he would not only be a tombstone level player, but also an undead level player. If I did not receive the mission 2 days ago, I would really be a little afraid. William looked at the A-level mission in the mission list, and could not help but want to drool. With such a big pile of experience, how many levels could he level up? Build a town. Mission level. A number of buildings. 5355/8,000 wall. 0/10,000 meters. The height must not be lower than 5 meters. The thickness must not be lower than 1 meter. Conference hall. 0/1 blacksmith room. May 5th tailor room. May 5th army camp. 2 halves number of soldiers. 800/500 occupation hall. Warrior minter January 1st. Assassin minter January 1st. Knight minter January 1st. Ranger minter January 1st. Hunter minter January 1st. Cannon minter 0/1. Beginner mage minter January 1st. Beginner wizard minter 1/1. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth mages 4 out of 5. Warlock minter January 1st. Mercenary guild 0 out of 1 hotel. 0/3 temple of light. Can be established magic sanctuary. Can be established palace of darkness. Can be established time limit. 180, 360 days experience reward. 300,000 experience. If the mission is completed within half a year, additional experience will be obtained. After half a year, the experience will be reduced. Mystery reward. Expanding a town was William's small goal in half a year. As for the mystery reward, he glanced at his unlucky inheritance and did not intend to ask for it. Although there are only 5 blacksmith rooms, they are all super large blacksmiths, and there are a total of 133 blacksmiths in them. William did not stop the dwarves from building a large blacksmith room. After all, this group of dwarves who had been on the run for many years basically lived in the mines and caves. Other than fighting, they also had a natural ability, smithing. But it had to be said that to have so many dwarf blacksmiths, it was something that other places could not even ask for. Many small towns wanted a high-level blacksmith, but it felt like a fool's dream. But how many high-level blacksmiths were there in the border town? 30 plus, there was no other way. Even for the dwarves who liked to smithing, this was also forced. After all, they were on the run and had no other leisure activities. Master blacksmith, other than Lautner. There were also 5 dwarf blacksmiths. Grandmaster blacksmith, other than Odom. There was also Old Hank, a hidden character with an epic bloodline. As for the things made by this group of dwarves, would anyone buy them? This did not matter. As the Lord, William would naturally help them find sales channels. For example, the Black Lava Dukedom, which no longer had a source of iron, or would definitely purchase a large number of materials in the face of the tight national power. But His Royal Highness did not intend to sell iron anymore. Instead, he directly forged shaped equipment for him and sold it at a higher price. Not only could it allow the blacksmiths in the territory to gain forging experience, but it could also earn a lot of money. Of course, as the middleman of the transaction, he naturally earned a lot. After all, William was the master of the iron or mine, and the dwarves were equivalent to working for him. As for the buildings, such as the Temple of Light, the Magic Sanctuary, and the Palace of Darkness, it was not a matter of pure camp, because the 3 were consistent and independent. As a neutral camp, the border town could not build the 3. They could also build the 3 at the same time. This thing was like spreading faith, and the 3 fought over it. If the Temple of Light was built, there would be the rarer temple night occupations, priests, and so on. If other palaces were built, there would also be some rare occupations. It's a little difficult to contact this group of people, or rather, they might not think highly of my town and might not send people to settle in. William scratched his head. The Temple of Light and the Palace of Darkness had to be built. The benefit was nothing else but to attract future players. As for the Magic Sanctuary, it must not be built. Otherwise, Moses' life would be very difficult, and he might even leave. There is no need to give up a future legendary boss for a middleman mage mentor. Why don't I go all out and build a wizard tower for Moses? William scratched his head. The cost of building a wizard tower was expensive, but it was not that it was impossible to build, but it was very difficult now. Chapter 36. The Occupation Hall was not only for the players of the future, but it was also for the NPCs of the present. The mentors were all elves under his command. There were many professionals in Williamstown, including almost all ordinary professionals. As for the few missing mentors, he was not in a hurry. He would only recruit mentors after he had confirmed the candidates. After all, for most of the NPCs and players, it was enough for the mentors to be one level higher than them. They did not need to be too strong. Simply put, just those skills and secret manuals alone were enough to make most people feel embarrassed. My lord, 30 knights, 20 warriors, 20 magic swordsmen, and 30 rangers are ready. William nodded at Knox and looked at Odom, who was sending them off. In the next few days, I'll leave the expansion of the town to you. Lautner and I will be back soon. If we can open up the trade route, we will choose a fixed time to conduct the mithril trade. My lord, don't worry. I will protect the territory with my life. Odom Heavyhammer had been on the run for many years. Now that he finally had a stable life, he had learned to cherish it. And because William had led his troops to save them, there would definitely not be any military chaos. As for leaving the expansion of the town to him, Odom could not help but frown. Since when did this lord care about it? Then I'll leave it to you. William nodded shamelessly. He mounted a white horse and left with everyone. Most of the places in the Blackleaf Forest were in a primitive state. There were almost no wide roads. Even if there were some mountain roads, if no one used them for a long time, they would gradually be covered by plants and return to their original state. The lucky thing was, as the lord, William could watch as his subordinates opened up a path with their swords while he rode a horse, drank fruit wine, and slowly followed behind. Lautner was the executive and William's biggest bodyguard. At this moment, he followed quietly. He needed to preserve his strength at all times and not be a laborer. But when he looked at William, who was enjoying himself, he felt that William seemed to have exerted the power of a lord to the extreme. For example, when it was time to expand the city, William thought of many entertainment facilities that the town should not have. For example, there were 3 casinos. It was just a small town. Why did they need so many casinos? Not only could they gamble, but they could also gamble on equipment. How many idiots would do such a thing? But he heard that William planned to get some good materials and let Odom forge an epic equipment to put in the casinos. Thinking of this, Lautner also wanted to try his luck. There were 5 taverns. When it came to drinking, a small town with 5 pubs was still too many, but Lautner had nothing to say. But William had secretly built 3 brothels. Lautner could not help but think that Sir Lord was a little too precocious. Was he in heat? After all, elves wouldn't reach sexual maturity until they were 30 years old. However, even if Lautner had not eaten pork, he had seen pigs run. He would not underestimate a brothel. As long as it was a slightly larger human town, the daily profit of a brothel would be more than 2 taverns. The premise was that William wouldn't force women. William glanced at Lautner without batting an eyelid. He felt that Lautner was secretly complaining about him. So he said, "This can't be helped. We have to open a path with the Blue Moon Lake. If not, how many boxes of gold coins would we need to sell the mithril alone? Without a clear path, they couldn't possibly let people carry the boxes back. Of course, they had to use horses to pull the carriages. And the longer it drags on, the more dangerous it will be for us. Although it's all trade between elves, the Blackleaf Forest doesn't only have elves." "I understand. Sir Lord, you don't have to explain to me." Of course, Lautner understood, but he didn't understand why the Lord suddenly valued him so much. "Well, it's good that you understand. The key to this journey still depends on you, Uncle Lautner." William smiled kindly. "Did you call me uncle again?" Lautner turned his head and muttered. Every time William called him uncle, he felt that he had to give up something. For example, the bloody battle with the pale orc, for example. The last time he gave him the Watchman of Dawn inheritance scroll, he had no choice. William was such a real person. On this kind of adventure in the wild, he, who had yet to grow up, really hoped that there would be a strong and real man who could help him take damage. 100 miles didn't seem very far, but in the primeval forest, it was definitely not easy to open a new simple path. If there were no accidents, even if there were professionals who used battle energy to open the path, it would still take 3 to 5 days. There were too few mages. Most of the mages under him were middle level. Otherwise, if he found some earth or wood mages, it would be much easier to open the path, but it would be much faster to return. As long as there were no problems with the road, they could return to the territory within half a day. The Black Lava Dukedom covered an area that was almost as big as Heilongjiang province. The capital of the country was called Black Lava City. The entire city was built with a kind of black rock with beautiful patterns. Every night, if the magic lamps on the side of the road were not lit, one would really not be able to see their fingers, but this kind of black rock was very strong and had a certain degree of magic compatibility. As long as the mages enchanted it day and night, it could increase the defense power. This was the key reason why it was chosen as a building material. On the spacious main street, Curry was wearing luxurious clothes. He didn't look miserable in vicissitudes like a few days ago. It was obvious that he was really a noble, a viscount of the Black Lava Dukedom. Although he was already an adult, he didn't have a territory. The territory of the Black Lava Dukedom was limited and there were so many nobles. There was no land left for him unless he took the risk to open up a new territory. But how many nobles would do such a strenuous and unrewarding thing? Now, the only interest that Curry could fight for were his father's Earl inheritance rights and territory. But he still had an older brother. According to the inheritance rules of the legendary continent, as long as there were no major problems, the title would usually be passed on to the eldest son. The relationship between the brothers wasn't good, so the final outcome could be imagined. Therefore, Curry, who knew his future earlier, used the inheritance left by his mother before she died to form a caravan. After 7 or 8 years of life and death, the caravan expanded a lot. Other than his own caravan, there were 5 small caravans that could earn a lot of gold coins every year. And he used the gold coins to recruit many professionals. He planned to kill his brother when he went hunting in the Blackleaf Forest every year. Hunting in the Blackleaf Forest. Curry wandered around the Black Lava City for a long time. He didn't know how many turns he had taken before he finally entered a dark alley. Unfortunately, not long after, he walked out with a depressed face. The asking price of a shadow assassin organization is really black-hearted. Curry liked to prepare for both eventualities, especially when it came to his future. No amount of preparation would be too much. But the Shadow Assassin Organization was the top assassin organization in the legendary continent. The asking price was often too much for many people to afford. But since I'm hunting in the Blackleaf Forest, then can I talk to one of the princes? After all, the hunting day is 10 days later, and it's not far from his territory. Curry really didn't have that much money. He was just a small noble. The asking price of the Shadow Assassin Organization was too high. After giving it, he couldn't pay his men to keep quiet. Because of this, he thought of the arrogant lord of the border town who had a greedy look in his eyes. You like slaves? Then I'll bring you more. Curry raised his eyebrows and made up his mind. Chapter 37. As time went by, William and his companions arrived at their destination safely and without any trouble. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. The Blue Moon Lake was arranged in picturesque disorder. As they approached the Blue Moon town, their field of vision became wider. As a town where tens of thousands of elves lived, the scale was naturally several times larger than the current border town. However, other than the main city of the elves in the Blackleaf Forest, there was only the Dark Night City. The other gathering places did not have city walls. Because they liked to live in tree houses, they liked to have a free field of vision. The wood element mages of the elves had many rare skills and inheritances. They could plant magic seeds in the ground and use magic to accelerate the growth of the seeds. As the trees grew, they could transform them into different tree houses. Hence, this elven town that ordinary people found very amazing was slowly unveiled in front of everyone's eyes. They saw tall and sturdy trees were connected together, and each treehouse had its own unique style and exquisiteness. These tree houses were often more than 10 meters high, and pots of colorful flowers were blooming on the balconies. It was a beautiful sight to behold. As for the connected tree trunks, it was like a road connecting the tree houses together. The elves walked around the tree trunks flexibly. Even if they ran, they would not fall. This was like a monkey climbing a tree. This was their instinct. Below the tree trunks, there were many vines. These vines turned into many swings, ladders, hammocks, and so on according to the needs of magic. The elves lived in the south, and the Blue Moon Lake was in the north. Every morning when they opened the windows and saw the sparkling Blue Moon Lake, their mood was very good. The arrival of William and his companions attracted the attention of many elves. Some elven children who were playing by the lake looked curiously at William, who was leading the group. "Uncle, why aren't you dirty?" one of them asked bluntly. William turned his head and glanced at the soldiers behind him, who looked aggrieved. He immediately gave them a reassuring look. Then he dismounted and walked in front of the little girl. He patted her little head. "Because you're shorter than me, so you don't understand." The little elven girl was stunned. She did not understand the meaning of this sentence. She did not even understand. What did this uncle's answer have to do with her question? But when she came back to her senses, William had already left with his people. Thinking of fish, she continued to catch fish with her friends in the Blue Moon Lake. The Blue Moon Town's elves weren't too surprised or happy about the arrival of their fellow elves, who were clad in armor. As long-lived elves, even if they suddenly met a friend that they hadn't seen for decades, they wouldn't let them shout and hug each other. Of course, unless they had a particularly good relationship, they would just nod at each other, drink some fruit wine, and talk about the interesting things they had done in the past few decades. Due to their long lifespans, they were used to taking their time to enjoy life. Apart from the true army warriors, the other elves still preferred to appreciate art, to feel the beauty of nature, and to enjoy life instead of fighting and killing. As a result, the longer the elves lived, the more experienced they would be in certain areas. They would even be so outstanding that it would make one's scalp go numb. For example, a true elven blacksmith, as long as he could live for thousands of years, as long as he really liked this hobby, no matter how poor his talent was, he could still reach the level of grandmaster or legendary. After all, someone once said that if a pig lived for 10,000 years, it could also become a god. Even if he wasn't a god, he was already a legend after living for 10,000 years. In the past, players had voted for the top 10 unsolved mysteries of the world of gods. How many legendary professionals, life professions, did the elves have? No one could say for sure. In any case, there were many. There was no doubt that the older the elven warriors were, the stronger they were. Even if the quality of battle energy and magic did not change, which meant that they could not increase their level, the attributes of their bodies would still slowly increase with time. Just like how old giant dragons were very strong. No one liked to provoke elves that were over 1,000 years old. These old elves were even more shrewd than humans. Moreover, there was the word shrewd in front of their race. They had experienced too many wars and hardships in life. The moment they really attacked, they would definitely make their enemies feel despair. This was also one of the reasons why even if the elves suffered heavy losses, as long as they didn't want to conquer the continent, they could still stand tall and become the main race of the continent. After everyone arrived at the center of the elven town and settled the horses, Lautner brought William to find the executive of the Blue Moon Town. As for the other warriors, because of their pitiful appearance, they were invited to the homes of other hospitable elves as guests. After all, elves who did not live in human society rarely paid special attention to things like wealth. It was very normal to treat elves of the same race generously. Of course, the elves were rich, so they did not care about these things, and the elves preferred to earn their own living. As long as they lived in the forest, food and clothing were rarely a real problem, and they often had more and more treasures. As William and Lautner arrived at the center of the Blue Moon Town, they both raised their heads at the same time and looked at the huge object that was more than 300 meters tall. This was a moon tree. Its roots were thick and strong, and its diameter was no less than 10 meters. Just on this tree alone, there were no less than 100 tree houses among them. The most shocking thing was whenever night fell, the entire moon tree would emit a faint blue light. It was very obvious. This was where the Moonlight Elves lived. The tallest and most beautiful tree house on the tree should be the house of the little Moonlight Elven Princess. TSK. This is indeed the treatment of a princess. William suddenly felt a little sad, not for himself, but for the previous William. After all, She is the youngest princess of the Moonlight Elves. You have to know that her brothers and sisters are older than her by more than 800 years. And now, the Moonlight Elven King is old, and he is about to return to the embrace of the World Tree. He suddenly has such a daughter. How can he not be happy? Lautner pouted. He seemed to want William to distinguish the difference between the two of them. After all, this was the daughter of the Elven King. William nodded his head worriedly. He did not have any dissatisfaction. He just raised his head and walked into the tree hole next to the roots. As the residents of the Elven Princess, did they want the little princess to climb the tree in a skirt and let a group of people admire the holy light under the princess' skirt? Of course, they had to climb the stairs. After all, this tree was so thick, the two of them entered the tree hole, and no one stopped them. The premise was that both of them were elves. No one could even tell that William was a half-elf. This was the key point. If other races came here, they would have been closely watched. Of course, when the two of them climbed up the tree, a handsome male Moonlight Elf stopped them with a smile. The Moonlight Elf's hair was silver, and his eyes emitted a faint silver light. He said, "Hello, I am Arthur, the executive of Blue Moon Town. May I know who you are? What do you want to do? Or is there anything I can help you with?" William thought that it was a good time. He hesitated for a while and said, "I am William Blackleaf. I have a few £100 of mithril that I want to sell." A few £100 of mithril? Arthur was stunned. As the Princess Knight and executive officer, he didn't expect that mithril could be sold in hundreds of kilograms. Then he seemed to remember something. He immediately widened his eyes and looked at William. William shrugged his shoulders with an adorable expression. Arthur, who was originally smiling, gradually became expressionless. Then, he decisively pointed at William. "Mithril? Wait here. I will call someone for you. Don't run." Lautner and William watched Arthur run away quickly. The two of them looked at each other. Is he calling someone to do business? But why did he ask me not to run? William's throat was dry as he scratched his head. He suddenly felt like when he was in primary school, someone had told him not to run after school at night. Lautner patted his shoulder. "Don't worry, don't run after school. At most, you will get beaten up." Chapter 38. William and Lautner did not run. No matter what, he was still a prince, and they were in the Blackleaf Forest. He could not be weak. Although he was not as good as the little princess of the Moonlight Elves in terms of treatment, they were of the same status. They did not have to wait long. Executive Arthur rushed over with 3 elfin guards. His eyes were filled with dissatisfaction, but he still said, "Her Highness invites Prince William up as a guest." William glanced at the annoyed Arthur. He did not understand what he was jealous of. Did he not understand that this princess wanted to see him because she wanted to find trouble with him? Moreover, he was just an executive. Even if he was the most trusted person of the princess, he was still the Princess Knight. Did he want to have any improper thoughts about the princess? Did he not know that other than marrying the prince, the princess could only be snatched away by the evil dragon? As a knight, he only needed to sacrifice his life to protect the princess' reputation. A spare tire knight. Immortality to the gods. What a popular saying of wisdom. As for this, Lautner, please follow me. You are welcome. Arthur smiled awkwardly. He asked someone to bring William to meet the princess while he personally entertained Lautner. Then William followed someone and continued to climb the spiral staircase in the tree hole. When they reached the highest point, the guard expressionlessly extended his hand to him, indicating for him to continue walking. William nodded and walked out with large strides. After leaving the tree hole that was filled with magic lamps, he saw a garden floating in the air. There was a fountain, water, and the chirping of insects and birds. There was no so-called wood, and there were soft flowers and grass under his feet. The vines above his head were linked together, blocking most of the hot sun. Rays of sunlight shone down like golden sand on the lawn. 7 or 8 meters away, there was a silver-haired girl in a long white dress. She swayed alone, as if she did not know that someone had arrived. Extravagant, too much. William did not pay much attention to the princess. Instead, he complained about the living environment. But just as he was about to walk forward, he heard a voice that sounded like a lark. "Take off your shoes. Don't ruin my lawn." It was at this moment that William glanced at the high heels inlaid with crystals in the corner of the door. He had to say that the aristocratic women in this world quite liked to wear high heels, and there were even things like stockings that surpassed the times. Fortunately, William did not have any misgivings. He took off his shoes and walked in barefooted until he was behind the princess. He quietly looked at her. At this moment, William had to admit that the little princess of the Moonlight Elves was indeed a killer from the back. She definitely gave people the feeling of a little fairy. Her slender waist couldn't even withstand a tight grip. Her two little feet were placed together, naughtily touching the flowers under her feet from time to time. Her long silver hair had already reached her waist. Isn't Prince William going to be the lord of the border town? How come he has the time to come to Blue Moon Town? Angel Moonlight turned her head. Angel. The name was very common, but the name has another meaning, angel. Angels, on the other hand, represented kindness, holiness, and integrity. She had a pair of bright eyes that flickered with silver light. It was as if she could see through a person's heart. That almost flawless face made many people yearn for her day and night. However, until William saw the pair of eyes in an instant, all his fantasies had been shattered. He had transcended mortality and entered holiness. His sage mode had been activated. William smiled indifferently and said, "Why don't you call me brother? I remember that when we were young, before I scared away your unicorn, you always called me brother." Angel's eyes flashed. She curiously tilted her head, as if she wanted to see through William's heart. But no matter what, she felt that William's heart was like a lake, unable to stir up any waves. This feeling, I haven't felt it in a long time. Angel did not answer William's question. She gently jumped off the swing and placed her hand in the air, as if she was touching something. William raised his eyebrows. He had long heard about the unicorn's ability. It was a pity that the unicorn's mind-reading skill could only be used on NPCs. For a fake player like him who had a data template, the mind-reading skill was useless, especially since he was not interested in the little princess who had an airport runway at such a young age. It was not as good as the magic otaku C is C++ at home. Why did I call you brother? I was too young then, and you lied to me. Logically speaking, I'm older than you. I'm already 18 years old this year, and you're only 16. Angel seemed to have thought of something. She blinked her crescent-shaped eyes and said with a smile, 16. William scratched his head awkwardly, but he was obviously very handsome, very tall, and very precocious, except that he was not sexually mature. So he changed the topic. Actually, I'm also very curious. Why did you come to the Blackleaf Forest at such a young age? William did not understand. According to the lifespan of an elf, she could wait until she was more than 100 years old before she traveled far, even if she had to marry a Blackleaf elf. It's all right, I'm not too homesick. Angel seemed to have thought of something and shook her head sadly. She continued, and I can go home any time because there's a space door in my room that leads to the Moonlight Forest. When I was young, I couldn't sleep here, so I would sneak home in the middle of the night and come back the next day to lie in bed. No one knew that I had gone back. But my mother has already returned to the embrace of the world tree, and my father often falls into a deep sleep, so he can't always take care of me. William looked at Angel and gradually fell into deep thought. Now, as a prince, he no longer wanted to talk to this princess, although listening to these stories would give people the urge to comfort the girl in front of him. But the saddest story was that one might not be their biological child, but the bloodline inheritance could not be faked. But the attentive William could still tell from a few short sentences that the relationship between the Moonlight Elves and the royal family was not too good. This little princess did not mention her brothers and sisters who were a few hundred years older than her. In addition to the chaotic situation in the Moonlight Forest in his previous life, it was not difficult to guess that the Moonlight Forest had already fallen into a crisis. Ahem, Angel, you know that I've been the lord of the border town recently and accidentally dug up a mithril mine. Are you interested in some? William did not want to continue talking nonsense with her. This little princess who owned a unicorn did not have a good impression of him at all. She could even block out the fact that he was handsome. Then what was there for him to have an in-depth conversation with? Mithril. Angel's eyes widened. How much? A total of 500 pounds. Wow, are all mithril in terms of 100 pounds? Angel seemed to be very puzzled. Was the production of mithril so much? They had just found a mithril mine, and there was so much mithril. How big was the mithril mine? So William patiently explained it to her. That's good. I'll accept this 500 pounds of mithril. Thank you, brother, for your gift. Angel smiled and nodded. William was a little confused. He explained with a little difficulty. Do you have some misunderstandings about my purpose of coming here, my dear sister princess? Didn't you give me 500 pounds of mithril because you wanted to see me? Angel raised her eyebrows with a tsundere look on her face. She looked exactly like a little fairy who had descended to the world. So, I'm here to sell the mithril. William did not know how many good impression points he would get if he gave away 500 pounds of mithril, but he really needed gold coins. Angel seemed to be a little angry, but she did not argue. She directly waved her hand and said, Go and look for Arthur. He will talk business with you. Goodbye, William. Sister, goodbye. William raised his eyebrows. What a real little princess. When she heard that he was not here to give the mithril, she decisively threw the word brother into the corner. She might even step on it a few times. Chapter 39. 180. 200. No, the highest price is 180 gold coins for 500 grams of mithril. It's impossible to sell it at 200. Arthur said stubbornly. Although he didn't care about a few gold coins, he couldn't care less about tens of thousands of gold coins. As the executive of Princess Angel, he had to do all he could to protect the interests and glory of the princess. Some things that the princess wouldn't do or even think about. He had to be the bad guy. William and Lautner looked at each other. Both of them knew that it wouldn't be sold for more than 200 gold coins in Blue Moon Town. But it was very safe to trade here. They didn't have to worry that the elves would leak the trade information or even send people to rob and kill them. Then it's settled. 500 grams of mithril, 180 gold coins for 500 grams, 90,000 gold coins. William nodded at Arthur. Arthur looked impatient. He didn't have a good impression of William, or rather, he didn't have a good impression of any Blackleaf Forest prince. That's right. If we trade now, you can bring the mithril over and you can leave. Why don't we round it up to 100,000 gold coins? William asked carefully. Arthur, who had already turned around, slowly turned his head. His gaze was cold, as if saying, Do you think I'm stupid? But the effect of being handsome was really an advantage. He didn't know why. Arthur gradually developed a good impression of him of 67 points, which was exactly William's charm. Arthur didn't know if he was crazy, but he actually said, It seems that it wasn't easy for you to come here. I'll calculate it as 91,000 gold coins for you. William immediately stood up. Then it's settled. Lautner, let Knox bring the mithril over. We'll bring the gold coins back. The trade went smoothly. No matter if it was the Blackleaf Elves, Moonlight Elves, or Snow Elves, they all had something in common. That was pride. They wouldn't lie about this trade, unless it concerned the fate of their race. Even if he said this, Arthur was already regretful and confused. Unfortunately, William had already run away. As for the princess with the little white horse, they didn't see each other again. William was not reluctant to leave, but he was not in a hurry to go back. He let the elves under his command rest for a few hours and had a good meal before he chose to go back. According to the current production of the mithril mine, they could produce about 100 caddies of mithril every month. So William and Arthur decided to trade for 50 caddies of mithril every month, which meant that they would have a fixed income of 9,000 gold coins every month. With this transaction of 91,000 gold coins, as long as his lordship makes reasonable arrangements, coupled with the gold coins in the future, the border town will definitely expand into a town within half a year. Lautner sighed slightly. The border town was also on the right track. Ever since he came to the town, Lord William's rise was not slow. It could even be said that it was very fast. For example, the sudden appearance of iron and mithril veins provided the foundation for construction and gold coin income, not to mention the large number of dwarves. In addition, some orcs who were courting death gave a lot of EXP to the elven warriors in the territory. You should know, in addition to training, eating magical beast meat, magic potions, and so on, NPCs could only gain experience through battles. NPCs could experience life and death battles, and even gain several levels in a row. NPC warriors who had survived hundreds of battles grew at a speed that was not slower than players. This was also why every time the upper limit of the version was lifted, the levels of NPCs in the chaos of war would also increase rapidly. For example, Lautner was originally level 56. After a battle with a pale orc, he successfully gained 2 levels in a row and reached level 58. Although he was still a middle-level combat professional, he was one step closer to the upper limit of level 70. When William thought of this, he could not help but glance at Lautner. He always wanted to find some strong monsters so that his personal bodyguard could reach the upper limit of the version as soon as possible. Lautner silently shut his mouth when he saw the malicious look in his eyes. However, he still heard those 2 words, "Uncle, I heard that there are some trolls near the territory." William rode on his horse and asked thoughtfully, Really, is there such a thing?" Lautner's mouth twitched. Trolls, social creatures, liked dark and damp areas, and usually chose caves with lakes. Strength? Because they were near the lakes, they could find animals, magical beasts, and even anything that moved that came to drink water. They were very strong. William pretended to understand and explained, "How can there not be any? Do you know that there are 2 mountains directly south of the border town? There's a large lake in the middle, and the source of our Rainbow River is there. Actually, I have some ideas about the ocean and that lake. We can totally build 2 docks near the lake and the ocean and make some fishing boats. Not only can we increase the source of food, but we can also enrich the dishes. But if we want to get close to the ocean, we can go directly to the lake. If not, we can only go around the lake and go to the left and right of the 2 mountains. But if we do that, the gains do not make up for the losses. Not only will the journey be doubled, but it is also too dangerous. My lord, if you have any questions, just say it. You don't have to call me uncle." Lautner saw that William was unwilling to give up, so he could only continue to insist. "Take some time to kill that group of trolls and other magical beasts by the lake. How about that?" "No problem." "Okay." William nodded, ignoring Lautner's crying face. He had no choice. He did not know how to refuse and could not refuse, so he could only bear it like a real man. On the way back, there were also no accidents. The depths of the Blackleaf Forest were very dangerous, but it was only for individuals or small teams. Most magical beasts were not interested in treating them as food in front of a large team. It was the same. William brought so many gold coins with him. He was also afraid that accidents would happen. Similarly, he was not interested in dealing with magical beasts that he met by chance. Finally, after seeing the expanding border town, William and the others heaved a sigh of relief. Odom also put down the work in his hands. With a head of bright golden hair, he came to welcome the team. It has only been 6 days, and the Lord is back. He is very fast. Odom's eyes lit up as he looked at the chests of gold coins. Dwarfs and giant dragons had the same hobby. They both liked shiny gold coins. In addition, the dwarfs liked mining, so the former Dwarf Empire and the current 7 Dwarf Kingdoms were all extremely rich countries. It was far from what a normal human kingdom could compare to. "Stop looking. I will give you a raise." William stretched out his hand and waved it in front of his eyes. Then, when they entered the town, there were many people that he had never seen before. Who are these people? William was a little curious. Could it be that Curry had already sent the slaves here in advance? Odom pointed. There are some poor people from the Black Lava Nation and the Iron Nation. They know that the border town is expanding and that there will be wages, so they came here to work. In the 6 days that you were away, there were more than 200 people, and it seems that there will be more and more people. Do you want to settle down here? William saw many young people. They were all good leaks. There are many people with this idea. After all, a lively town is 100 times better than those human towns filled with vampire nobles. Odom sighed. It had to be said. The reason why there were constantly people joining the neutral camp was because the human noble model was too oppressive for the commoners to bear. Chapter 40. The next day, William was woken up by the 3 bears licking him on the bed, so he threw them 3 times consecutively. Multiple kills. Pom, pom, pom. he skillfully threw the three little bears back to their little nest. Unfortunately, little bears were very dependent. After sulking for a while, the three little fellows climbed onto his bed again with their childish voices. "Someone, feed these three little ones milk." William rolled his eyes and got up. The sun had just risen, and he had to break the seal on his bed. It was so uncomfortable that it drove him crazy. When he put on his clothes and opened the door, three maids were already waiting at the door. "My lord, the bears are growing very fast. They can eat meat in another half a month," the leading maid said. "You can tell me if there are any expenses. Feed them first." William nodded and walked out of the room. He looked at the workers who had woken up early and were already busy building the houses. He smiled brightly like a vampire. He was in a good mood. "My lord, good morning, my lord. May the glory of the gods be on my lord forever." William met many newcomers who greeted him respectfully along the way. They were all citizens of the Iron Nation and the Black Lava Nation. They came here to work and wanted to stay here for a long time. When they met William, they naturally had to please him. Even if they didn't let the Lord remember their appearance, they could still say a word to him. William also nodded lightly to show his friendliness. But just his nod had already moved many people. The nobles in the human countries all raised their heads arrogantly and regarded the commoners and slaves as ants. How could there be any response? They also heard that the lord of the town was an elf who was very friendly and amiable, so they dared to greet him. Unknowingly, these outsiders felt that the border town was much better than the two nations. The expansion mission continued. William didn't need to do anything. He didn't bring his men to do the territory mission today. As time passed, when the sun was high up in the sky, William, who was standing at the edge of the cliff, finally saw a large number of troops on the plains. So many people? Lautner was a little confused. They had said that they only needed 3,000 ordinary slaves and 500 professional slaves. But now, there were no less than 5,000 or 6,000 people. He also discovered that there were 500 soldiers guarding this huge team. Or rather, they were preventing the slaves from escaping. Curry is quite capable. William raised his eyebrows. Slave trading was legal in many human countries. But for the country, only the domestic slave trade was legal, and the outflow of people was illegal. However, no one disliked gold coins. Although the country did not like the outflow of slaves, it could not resist the policy of the higher-ups and the countermeasures of the lower levels. The nobles in the country often had all kinds of trade channels. Now William was convinced that Curry was not a supplier, but a middleman. These slaves must have been provided by a great noble. The mountain path was not easy to climb, but this was the only way. The group of people could only climb up the steep cliff with sullen faces. William had no plans to repair the road for the time being. Instead, he felt that the more difficult the road was, the better it would be for the safety of the territory. After Curry brought a large number of troops to the outskirts of the town, he took the initiative to wave the 500 soldiers off the cliff. The soldiers of the town naturally went to collect the slaves. Curry looked at William, who was a little confused and did not explain in advance. Instead, he laughed heartily. "Respected Lord, I have brought you the people you wanted. What do you think of their quality?" "Very good. They are all strong men and women. But isn't the number a little too much?" William was not too happy. Instead, he frowned. Was Curry planning to force them to buy and sell? But with just the 500 soldiers he had brought, wasn't he being too confident? Curry seemed to see that William did not understand. After all, it was not surprising that there would be some small gifts when doing business, but this was too much. So he invited William to walk to a remote place and said bluntly, "My lord, the extra 2,000 ordinary slaves and 200 professional slaves are all gifts for you." William beamed and patted him on the shoulder. "Brother, if you have anything to say, just say it. As your brother, I will try my best to help you solve it." Curry's mouth twitched. Was it so real? And were you really older than me? But although Curry's rank was high, he did not dare to call William brother. He glanced around and said carefully, "My lord, I really have something to trouble you with." William nodded non-committally and gestured for him to continue. "I am a viscount of the Black Lava Dukedom. My father is a count, but I am my father's second son. My father fought for tens of years in his early years. When he was old, his body was full of injuries and illnesses, and now he is on the verge of death. But I want to inherit his count title. Curry's words were very direct. After all, he could see that this Lord William was a more direct elf. Although this was a little different from the elves in his memory, this kind of elf was easier to communicate with. You wanting to kill your brother? William raised his eyebrows. Yes, my brother will come to the Blackleaf Forest to hunt in 3 days. This is my only chance, and also my last chance. If I can't grasp it after my father passes away, my lord will probably never see me again. Because of the caravan, Curry knew a lot of big nobles. But the scheming among the nobles and the vampire-like greed were even more difficult to talk about. He did not dare to ask for help from other nobles. Even if there were really big nobles to help him, he could only become a puppet in the end. This is not good. William did not immediately agree. He felt that this matter could be done, but after all, he still had the image of an elf. He could not collapse now, and he could not appear too greedy. Curry made up his mind and immediately said, 5,000 ordinary slaves and 600 professional slaves. This is a gift that I will definitely give to my lord after I inherit the count title. Hiss, this is not good. William took a deep breath. He always felt that this bargain came too easily. 6,000 ordinary slaves and 700 professional slaves. This is the maximum I can promise now. My lord, you don't have to be afraid that accepting these slaves will cause the Black Lava Dukedom to target you. I will adjust this. The most important thing is that even if I inherit the count title, the caravan will still exist. At that time, I will give my lord the lowest discount for all transactions. It had to be said that Curry would rather believe in the elves than look for assassins. After all, honest and trustworthy elves had been around for too long on the continent. William's expression was serious. He touched his chin and doubtfully said, If I kill him, what if you don't give me these slaves? My lord, you must be joking. I'm willing to make a contract with the gods. Curry's smile was very sincere, but at the same time, there was a hint of ruthlessness. Which god? William suddenly asked. Curry's smile gradually disappeared. He twitched his mouth and said, The god of light. William suddenly laughed. Haha, then don't worry. Leave the rest to me. Brother Curry, you just need to tell me the time and place of your brother's hunt. Everything else is not a problem. After all, as a righteous and kind elf, I really don't like those brothers who are about to inherit the title. They are actually such heartless people. Then everything depends on my lord. Curry felt a little heartache, but he still nodded. After all, in his eyes, slaves were much cheaper than gold coins. The benefits of the slave trade were simply unimaginable. The source of slaves was so simple that it was unbelievable. Chapter 41. What? The City of Dawn? Odom had suddenly walked over to them. To the players. The future will be witnessed. William smiled mysteriously and did not explain. The contract to the gods. William understood this kind of thing very well. He promised that he would not let Curry play any word games. It could even be said, My lord is kind. May the gods bless you. Lautner gently flattered him. The elves who advocated freedom did not really like slaves. They believed that all living things in the world, except for the dark creatures, should be equal. There were too many places that had not been explored. Even all the treasures, mines, and properties inside and outside the territory belonged to William. But the difference in the size of the territory was very big. For example, Moses. But I'm still not strong enough. I need fame and reputation. William had never liked his legendary bloodline so much. He wanted his territory to become the only standing city in the Dark Zone. As long as William continued to expand his territory, the vast Blackleaf Forest in the south would also be his territory. Stop talking nonsense. Have you seen the gods descend? William twitched his lips. The gods had become extinct in the legendary continent. Other than the rare miracles, there were no gods in the entire continent. The power of a lord was no less than that of an emperor. So, when I expand the city, there must be something that the players like. I must let them join the territory and not go to the other two nations. William knew that he would not take all the players in, but he would try his best to take in some players. In particular, this person must have a strong bloodline and be close to the legendary level. But before he became stronger, he would definitely not become a mercenary, bounty hunter, or an assassin. He would also not wander around. The war between the two nations in the first version did not seem to have anything to do with the gods, but it was also a prelude for the gods to appear. The premise was also, if he went against the oath, he would suffer an exaggerated punishment, including the area of the ocean and those unknown islands. According to the information published in the game, the area of the gods' continent is almost 100 times the size of the entire Earth. Until the day I died, I did not explore too many areas. As an NPC who could not be resurrected, William's only wish was to become stronger. At the very least, he could not die at the hands of players. After all, this thing still had its uses. The most important thing was that there couldn't be a lack of procedures to establish the contract. Words were not enough, so there had to be a magic ritual. Apart from those so-called fake gods, only the sages were the top existences in the legendary continent. William did not explain. He only knew that old Hank loved to drink in his previous life. A player had given him a lot of expensive wine, and it had actually allowed the weapon that he had ordered to be forged in advance. But who would have known that in the near future, there would be an endless stream of dark creatures coming out from the underground demon's den? Even the once arrogant Iron Nation was destroyed. Odom shook his wavy blonde hair. He did not think too much about it. No matter what the territory was called, it had nothing to do with him. He seemed to have a lot of power as the deputy mayor, but the final ruling power was still William's. In the eyes of the players, his legendary bloodline was a legendary boss. In the future, he would be a legendary super boss. His potential was limitless, not to mention relying on him. If they wanted to F***CK him, that would also be fame, and there were many ways to become stronger. Like the plains in front of him, with green grass and tens of thousands of horses galloping, the level was not important. But this was not to forge weapons. It was to recruit this Grandmaster-level blacksmith with epic bloodline. As long as he could pretend to be an unparalleled, be **starred. It seems that the gods are righteous, and the devils are evil, which is also the light and dark camps. That's right, other than dark creatures, we elves do not discriminate against any other creatures. There are less than 10 billion intelligent races. Isn't this considered a vast territory? The territory mission was one of them. Naturally, they had to participate in the main mission of every version, as well as some side missions. But this kind of leveling speed became very slow in the later stages. And the reason for this situation was the result of the Battle of the Gods. Only by recruiting enough players, issuing missions, and collecting experience was the way to level up quickly. My lord, old Hank has decided to join the blacksmith. Knox rushed over. And he also had the confidence that in the future, this town under his feet would become a light in the darkness. He also understood how to level up quickly. But to all the living creatures now, in the eyes of the gods and devils, they were all ants. They were servants that were to be enslaved and ordered around. They were just cannon fodder for them to play chess for fun. So the direction of development in the future was to recruit enough players. Bloodline was awesome. For example, a drunkard. If I had known that he loved to drink so much, this Grandmaster Blacksmith would have been settled long ago. Knox helplessly shrugged his shoulders. In addition, they could level up and become stronger in a short period of time. This was the most awesome ability of the players. Then let's change the name. First of all, this border town's B grade is too low. After the expansion of the town, let's change the name to the City of Dawn. William could not help but mutter. William's expression was solemn. He did not want to give up his territory. Even if it was very ordinary now, he knew the importance of the Blackleaf Forest in the future. He definitely could not easily give up this treasure land. He believed that he would have a great influence in the hearts of the players. The importance of the players goes without saying. Being able to resurrect is their strongest ability. Although the strength of the players of the same level cannot compare to the NPCs, Their unlimited resurrection is the foundation for them to stand firm. On the contrary, the best way is to establish power and have a large number of strong subordinates. At least by doing this, he would have the capital to go out and have fun. He needed enough money, a sturdy enough city, strong enough subordinates, and enough commoners to persevere with him. Especially now that William had the attribute template, he could also accept missions. As for the outcome of the people who were possessed, even if they did not die, they would be done for. When William heard this, he finally came back to his senses. He nodded to him. "All right, I'll go and see him again. It's not a waste of my gifts. It's a pretty good name. But what does it mean?" But it is also because of the appearance of the dark creatures that the players have officially entered the second version, the Darkness Invasion. But gods and devils are still too far away from me. But the return of gods and devils is a disaster that all living beings in the future cannot avoid. William was very clear about the nature of gods and devils. In the case of incarnations, every time a god spirit descended, a person would have to sacrifice their own body to bear the god spirit's possession. Yes, I intend to change the name of the territory. It will be called the City of Dawn. William nodded to him. Of course, it did not mean that there were no gods. In the future, many gods would use their incarnations to appear on this continent. But in a short period of time, it would be difficult for even a miracle to appear, let alone an incarnation. The president of the Magic Palace, who was also the teacher of Moses after the transaction was completed and Curry left, William said to Lautner, "Break up all these slaves. Let them start working as soon as possible to prevent any accidents. Also, tell them that you can give them the status of civilians, but they can't go out for half a year. They can also expand the town with salaries. If they have the talent, you can also give them training manuals for free so that they can become professionals." The legendary continent was the size of 10 Huaxia. The two were very different. Old Hank had chosen to become the official blacksmith because he had discovered that the town was developing rapidly. That was why he was tempted. Chapter 42. Old Hank sat on a rocking chair, watching a group of dwarves look at him with respect. He seemed to be wondering if he should greet them. He raised his eyebrows and shouted, ordering the dwarves to move his equipment one after another, because his original blacksmith shop was no longer useful. When Odom expanded the town, he built 5 large blacksmith rooms, which could accommodate hundreds of blacksmiths at the same time. They could also exchange their experiences. For example, how to play fast, feel good, not hurt, and not bleed, and so on. The reason why these dwarves were so respectful to him was because they had just found out that this old human was a blacksmith grandmaster. To the dwarves, this concept was far more sincere than respecting the strong. ****, I was the only blacksmith in the town. I lived well, slapped widows' buttocks, flirted with underage girls, and could do anything I wanted. Now there are more than 100 people in the same trade. How am I going to survive?" Old Hank was very upset. He scratched his bird's nest-like hair, his face full of displeasure. He had agreed to William's invitation because he was no longer so popular. Fortunately, he could be one of the owners of the blacksmith shop. Owner? This name sounds quite high-end. In the past, the town rarely needed weapons and armor. He was a blacksmith grandmaster, but he used a dragon saber to kill chickens. In the past, he could only help the commoners make some agricultural tools. So many young widows who did not want to spend money and were single would turn a blind eye to him, taking advantage of them. But now, there were too many blacksmiths. In addition, there were many blacksmiths of the master and grandmaster level that suddenly appeared, giving him a great sense of crisis. The other one was Mayor Odom. He had wavy blonde hair and a handsome face. Although he was short, his aura was extraordinary. Every day, he worked with his upper body bare. God knew how many widows had been seduced by his strong muscles. Old Hank was once the lover of the town's widows, so he naturally wanted to compete with him. William came to the blacksmith room that was being moved. He took a bottle of red wine worth 30 silver coins and came to visit an old acquaintance. Old Hank. He had no other surname, but his main occupation was a hidden occupation, Holy Hammer Warrior. This rare profession was very special, but it was very awesome. It could even be said that it was famous. However, there were a lot of requirements for this profession, and one of them was extremely perverted. That was, the sub-profession must be blacksmithing, and the blacksmithing profession must first reach the grandmaster level before they could change their profession. Try asking. How many players would give up on their main profession if they didn't know about the hidden quest? Instead, they would forcefully grind their profession to grandmaster before changing their profession. At the end of the Elven era, before humans officially became the masters of the continent, the 12 saints had appeared. Every single one of them was a super expert who could destroy cities and countries. The Hammer Warriors were one of them. William guessed that the Hammer Warriors relied on their equipment. However, he did not know how this fellow, with only an epic bloodline, had obtained such an inheritance. In any case, this old fellow's background was a secret, and he never made a move. Ever since the border town was destroyed and he joined the Iron Nation, other than playing with iron, he would go around swindling alcohol to drink. After the Iron Nation was destroyed by the dark creatures, he followed the players into the kingdom and was still active in the eyes of the players. How should I put it? Not all players can kill a boss, and not all players can get to know the dwarfs and obtain high-level equipment or even epic equipment. But Old Hank is an NPC who doesn't reject anyone. As long as he has enough money, alcohol, and materials, he can create gold, dark gold, and even epic equipment. This kind of person is like an NPC specially arranged by the game officials, so that the players will lose confidence in obtaining equipment. William had played to death in his previous life, but he had never experienced Old Hank's side mission. Perhaps his mission had been completed by others, but Old Hank was definitely an old fellow who followed the version and never died. In terms of survival skills, he was much better than Moses, the all-round great enchanter. In the game of gods, there were many levels of equipment. In comparison, the attributes of epic and legendary equipment were not too different. Only some special effects were the most precious, and at every stage, there would be high-level equipment for that stage. For example, before William reached level 40, he was considered a beginner professional. No matter if it was a beginner, intermediate, or advanced professional, they all had epic and legendary equipment of the same level. But before level 40, leveling up was too fast. It was a waste to obtain high-level materials to create low-level equipment. And this was also one of the reasons why William did not pursue more powerful equipment. The most important thing was, after painstakingly obtaining the mission information of a legendary equipment, the series of missions were extremely complicated. As long as you failed one, the legendary equipment would never be yours. Even if you wanted to sell the mission information, the conditions of the mission would change. Even if you were fated to complete the series of missions, the moment you obtained the legendary equipment, you would already be breaking through to the next stage. So in the game of gods, try not to pursue legendary equipment in the early stages of the game. The real top players would at most get an epic weapon and a set of decent equipment. But as a legendary boss, how can I not get a set of legendary equipment? William threw the red wine to Old Hank and said to him, "Hey, there's wine to drink, iron to drink, and a Grandmaster-level blacksmith to exchange experiences. Why are you still depressed?" Old Hank rolled his eyes and stood up slightly. "My lord, you don't know. Don't talk, I know." William stopped him from talking nonsense. He walked to his side and secretly said a few words. After Old Hank heard it, his eyes became brighter and brighter. He even licked the saliva at the corner of his mouth. He grabbed William's arm excitedly and asked, "Really? We're a small town?" William frowned. "In another half a year, we'll be a town. By then, with a population of tens of thousands, we'll be considered a small city." "That's good. My lord, you've done a good job." Old Hank, suddenly feel full of energy. "You'll be full of energy in half a year. I'm afraid that if we build the brothel now, those fellows who are expanding the town won't have the energy to work." William shrugged helplessly. It was better to open up the brothel than to block it. The thirst of single men far exceeded the imagination of normal people. There were no short videos in this era. Novels spread very slowly. As for pictures, these things could not be looked at for too long. They would be stained with a layer of sticky and strange-smelling liquid, greatly affecting one's sense of sight. So, for men in this era, the brothel was a necessity. It cannot be helped. William did not know how this game had passed the review. It was just that awesome. However, only those above the age of 18 could play the game. It seemed to have already hinted that this was an adult game. And, as the Lord, he did not need to force some people. As long as the brothel was open, there would often be women from the 2 neighboring duchies who would be willing to do this job. There were some people in the border town who would also go to the brothel in the other 2 duchies to find work. After all, it was not easy to meet acquaintances. As for fellows like Old Hank, the women only needed to spread their legs and lie on the bed. In less than 2 minutes, Old Hank would definitely lean against the head of the bed. He might even smoke an after-dinner cigarette and sigh that his masculinity was not lacking in the past. For out of 5 silver coins were handed over, he could earn 1 silver coin in 2 minutes. What other money could be easier than this? Chapter 43. Curry's brother, Darius, a middle-level knight, was the target of this mission. Today, he would lead 5 middle-level professionals as guards and 20 low-level professionals as attendants to hunt 15 miles west of the border town. William put the yellowed note on the flame and lit it, and the mission information appeared. Triggered new mission. Assassinate Viscount Darius. Mission level, C. Mission details. Kill the mission target and his attendants. Don't leave anyone who can talk. Mission reward, 20,000 experience. Mission failure. Someone escaped. The mission targets are all middle-level professionals, but it's only a C-level mission. The experience is really very little. William frowned, but what he was interested in was not the mission reward, but the slaves that Curry had promised him. In the expansion of the town, a lot of manpower was needed. It could almost be said that in an era without electricity and machinery, manpower was the most precious resource. Otherwise, human countries would not have restricted the trade of slaves. Unless Darius, the enchanter, could personally help him build the town with the surging magic in his stomach. According to the character of this all-round enchanter, the construction speed of 1 person was more awesome than 100,000 slaves. Since it's an assassination, it's not good to bring too many people. William thought for a moment, pushed open the door, and shouted, "Knox, gather 100 rangers and let them put on their equipment. We're going to do something." "Yes, my lord." Knox ran away. There was no doubt about the loyalty of the elves. Even if William took them to rob, it would be okay, let alone to kill. Otherwise, how could they be called personal guards? If they could fight to the death, they would not retreat. They could happily do good things together, and they could also do bad things together. This was a personal guard. As for whether this kind of thing would affect their values and outlook on life, they'll get used to it. Anyway, they all know that I'm a half-elf with many shortcomings. William stretched and put on his inner armor. He put on a very casual set of blue leather armor and picked up the Dawn 3-piece set, ready to set off. "Young master, it's here." A middle-level ranger pointed to a nearby location and said, "According to the information of those rangers, the location of the mutated black wolf should be here. I hope he is a mid-level magical beast. Otherwise, this year's spring hunt will be meaningless." Darius narrowed his eyes slightly. Someone chuckled and said submissively, "Then why don't we get some beginner-level slaves and let them run for a while the Lord hunts?" Darius clapped his hands gently. "Haha, good idea, but let's see how fierce that lightning wolf is first." It actually defeated a team of rangers by itself. "Haha, that team is a weakling. Young master can take on 10 ranger squads by himself." Darius laughed a few times and suddenly became serious. He snorted coldly and said, "Stop talking nonsense and keep moving forward. Keep your eyes open. If you let that mutant black wolf escape, you will be the prey." "Yes, my lord." Apart from the 4 mid-level guards, everyone else shivered because the Viscount in front of them was truly abnormal, or in other words, most of the human nobles had inherited some abnormal attributes. Curry looked at the 10 people in front of him. There were a total of 8 beginner professionals and 2 who had just entered the intermediate level. They were all secretly trained subordinates. He said with a solemn expression, "Brothers, whether I can inherit the Earl's position or not depends on you. There are more than 20 of them. How can we stop them? Why don't we call more people?" "This is obviously a suicide mission," one of the warriors said impatiently. I didn't say that we would do it ourselves. When the time comes, someone will help us take care of the target. We are only responsible for guarding here and preventing anyone from running out." Curry shook his head gently. When he looked at the person who spoke, there was a faint flash of cold light in his eyes. Lautner looked at the assembled team and thought that they were going to hunt magical beasts or clear the small tribes near the territory, etc. Only now did he know that they were going to assassinate. "My lord, do you have any misunderstanding about the word assassination?" Lautner was a little melancholy. William shrugged and wondered, "Is there any difference between one person, 2 people, and 100 people? Isn't it too much of a commotion? Is it too much of a commotion? You don't need to use your battle energy. Just shout in the dense forest. Even if you shout until your throat breaks, no one will come to save you 300 meters away. Why do I have to shout until my throat breaks? My throat is very good." William raised his eyebrows. "I haven't tried it. How would I know if your throat is good?" More than 100 people did not ride horses. The elves were marching in the forest, so it was often faster to walk than to ride. Since the elves on this trip were all rangers, their movement speed was much faster. Moreover, none of them wore armor. Instead, they all wore leather armor. Walking on the ground and climbing the trees made it very difficult for them to make the slightest sound. In addition, the elves' agility was quite high, so they only consumed a small amount of endurance. It was close to noon. The sun above their heads was very round and big, but only a small amount of sunlight could penetrate the thick leaves and shine on the dead leaves on the ground. This group of people were all separated with 10 people in a team. They could act as scouts and fight at any time. The goal of this trip, William had already made it very clear, was to kill. The elven guards were very surprised, but he explained a little that Darius was a perverted human noble who killed magical beasts and animals, and they were determined to kill him. As for whether Darius was a perverted human noble or not, it really didn't matter. Anyway, when William said that he was a perverted human noble, the elves would remember the sad past. They had never been soft on this kind of human noble. If there were 10,000 of them, they would kill 10,000 of them. They could use any perverted methods, so they didn't have to be polite. Everyone would take turns. Time passed. William did not know if he was lucky or if he had pulled off a strand of the leg hair of the goddess of luck. He actually met Darius and his men first. "Do we do it now?" Lautner, William, and Knox were hiding in the tree at the same time. The corners of William's mouth curled up slightly. "No, Knox, go and inform the others to surround us. Let the middle-level lightning wolf consume them for a while." He watched as Darius shouted, asking the professionals who were besieging the lightning wolf not to hurt its fur. But in this way, 3 professionals' throats had been bitten off by the lightning wolf. There were a few others whose skin had been charred black and emitted green smoke. It was obvious that they had been badly electrocuted. The black wolf bared its bloody teeth, electric sparks coming out of its mouth, as if it would spit out a bolt of lightning at any time. It had to be said that the lightning wolf's bloodline potential was average, but its shape and fur were very beautiful. In the beginning, many players liked to catch lightning wolf cubs as pets. If an adult lightning wolf's loyalty was high enough, it would definitely be a super strong support. It was very fast, and it was also very strong in close combat when it used its teeth to bite. However, compared to other magical beasts, its HP was like a little brother. If someone kicked in the waist, that would be a critical hit. Darius's expression was cold. He looked at the lightning wolf, killing his men one after another. He was already very impatient. Just as he raised his bow and arrow, a guard beside him pressed his hand on his shoulder and said softly without changing his expression, "Someone is coming." Although there is no sound or murderous intent, I can feel it. "Oh, is an assassin sent by my dear brother? I knew he wouldn't be so honest." Darius sneered, raised his hand, and shot an arrow. The lightning wolf, who had long lost its combat power, was shot through the head by an arrow, and blood splattered. He walked to the side of his spoils and looked around without any scruples. "Come out. As an assassin, I admire your ability to hide. Why don't you go and kill my brother? I'll pay you double the price." "How about that?" There was silence. "What are you afraid of? Although I have a lot of men, I won't do anything to you." I've said that I'll pay double the price to kill my brother. Darius shouted again. William suddenly popped his head out from behind the tree and asked curiously, "Really?" Darius narrowed his eyes. "Oh, an elf or a half-elf? Don't be afraid, little fellow. I, Darius, as a noble viscount, never bully others. Oh, come out, everyone come out. Don't be afraid. This trash won't bully others." William clapped his hands. Whoosh! 100 heavily armed elfin rangers all emerged from behind the tree. Darius suddenly tightened his *SS, feeling a kind of sadness in his balls. For middle-level professionals, the others. Chapter 44. Ahem, is there any misunderstanding between us? Darius was a man who knew how to act according to the situation. He quickly calculated the consequences of the battle between the two sides based on the difference in numbers. That was. He was dead meat. Misunderstanding? What misunderstanding? William sneered incomprehensibly. As a legendary boss with a group of subordinates, there had to be a plot when he bullied people. Darius coughed awkwardly. I'm a viscount of the Black Lava Dukedom, and my father is an earl. I don't know why I've annoyed you, Lord. Please forgive me. From the conversation, Darius knew that William should be the new elf for Bordertown. But when he spoke, there was always a trace of pride on his face. It had to be said that whenever he talked about his father's title, he would feel a sense of pride. It was not because of anything. It was because he felt that when he fought with his father, ordinary people were often no match for him. In his heart, he thought that as long as the new lord was a little afraid, he could go back alive. After all, he really did not think of William as a killer. It could not be that all these people were killers, right? What a joke. Did he think he was retarded? Darius thought that he had mistakenly entered someone else's territory and caused the elf's annoyance. There should not be a fatal crisis. Oh, that's why you killed my pet, Lightning Wolf. William was not interested in fighting with him for fear of scaring him to death. Then William became even more sad and pointed to the corpse of the Lightning Wolf. Look, my pet wolf has been shot in the head by you. You're still stepping on its body. Quickly lift your foot. Its fur has been trampled by you. It can't be sold. Ahem. Tell me, you killed my pet. How are you going to compensate me? Darius raised his foot and twitched his mouth. He had seen shameless people, but he had never seen such a shameless guy. So he could only take out a purple gem from his arms with an embarrassed expression. This is power. Throw it over, and I'll see for myself. William interrupted him. Swish! William reached out and took a look. His face lit up with joy, and he put it in his arms, just when Darius was equally happy. He found that William was staring at him again, like a pervert staring at a little white rabbit that had just grown up. His intention was obvious. He did not have enough money to buy his life. If he didn't pay for his life, this greedy elf would probably kill him. Darius and the 4 guards looked at each other and decisively took out something again. After all, as the Count's eldest son, he always had a lot of treasures with him. Hence, after throwing it 7 or 8 times, Darius had nothing left except his weapons and equipment. William pouted. So poor. Please let us go, my lord. As long as I go back, I will definitely bring you enough gifts. Darius smiled, his eyes sincere. Ah, scum, pervert. You want to live after killing my pet? Kill them. William couldn't be bothered with them and waved his hand lightly. All the elves immediately stood up and drew their bows with all their might. You despicable and shameless elf. My father will avenge me. Damn it! Darius shouted angrily, and the guards around him all erupted with battle energy. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Over 100 Dochi arrows shot out, and the instant they hit the Dochi shield, the sound of explosions rose and fell, and light flashed. For a moment, the surrounding trees were torn apart by battle chi, and the grassland was filled with ravines. Rush out! Darius clearly felt that the Dochi in his body was declining wildly. He was an intermediate warrior professional, and the amount of Dochi was more than double that of a beginner professional. But even so, Darius, who was in the middle of the crowd and had only been hit by a few arrows, knew that he could not defend for too long. But before he could say a second sentence, Lautner slowly stood up, took the golden longbow behind him, flicked the bowstring, took the arrow, and pulled the string. Swish! A dazzling silver light flashed through the space like lightning, and everyone could only see the cyclone behind the arrow. Then, the silver light pierced through many enemies in an instant, and also pierced Darius's head. The moment it touched the ground, bang! The dochi contained in the silver light exploded instantly. Everyone was sent flying. They were both intermediate professionals, but Lautner was more than 10 levels higher than Darius, and his bloodline was much stronger. Not to mention Darius alone. Even if they worked together, they would not be Lautner's match. After William saw this scene, he jumped down from the tree and walked to the many corpses. He could not help but grin. "TSK, you fell before I even did anything. Too weak. My lord is mighty." Nox raised his weapon and flattered him, as if he was the one who had just attacked. "My lord is mighty." A group of elves. Bah, I was the one who killed them. A group of shameless people. Lautner scolded. However, in the next second, Lautner raised his weapon and shouted, "My lord is mighty and domineering. My lord has just released his aura, and they have fallen. My lord's strength is simply terrifying." The group of elves nodded thoughtfully and suddenly realized that, well, this was why they were not executive officers. William just smiled slightly at this. There was no pride in his heart. After all, they were right. Ordinary people really did not understand the loneliness of being invincible. Then he pointed to the equipment on the corpses. "Take it off and bring it back to the furnace for retraining." "Yes, my lord." "That's right, my pet wolf. I'll bring it back to stew soup and meat for you to eat. It'll nourish your bodies. My lord is the true son of glory. May the gods bless you forever." A group of elves beamed at William. They had to admit that this lord was really not bad. Every time he led them to clear the danger near his territory, he would hand over those magical beasts to them. This lightning wolf, which did not have many external injuries, could be sold for at least a few hundred gold coins if its fur was completely removed. Now that this 300-kilogram magical beast belonged to them, they could divide the meat and drink the soup. Naturally, the fur would be made into inner armor. Due to their status as personal guards, they could also receive some mithril, which would allow them to easily obtain a silver-quality inner armor. If they could get Odom or Lautner to personally make one and add some precious materials, they might even be able to obtain a gold-quality inner armor. As for who the inner armor would belong to, it was up to them to decide. Anyway, according to their feelings, now that they were following their lord, they were not afraid that there would not be better things. Unknowingly, these guys' favorability towards me has greatly increased. William sighed and shook his head. Loyalty was the loyalty of subordinates to their lord. It was related to the probability of betrayal and escape. But favorability was very different. It was related to whether they could help him block arrows. During this period of time, he had increased the favorability of the 3 bears in the morning, the favorability of his elves in the afternoon, and Sia at night. No, it was enough to exchange magic with Sia at night. He could not increase favorability with her. Get rid of all their bodies. Since we're out, let's go around and kill a few magical beasts before going home. William carefully checked the number of corpses. The whole family was lying here neatly. Not one was missing. He did not care which Count Darius' father was. Although at least half of the forces of a duchy were concentrated in the hands of the nobles. But the one who really deterred William was at least a marquis. A mere count would not be taken seriously by him, especially a count of a duchy. He had 500 elven guards in his hands. Ordinary nobles did not dare to have any ideas about him. Moreover, there was no need to worry about this matter being exposed. As long as Curry still wanted to inherit the count's position, he would hide it well. The most important thing was that the Black Lava Duchy had no time to care about the life and death of a viscount. The Iron Duchy had issued a ban on iron and seemed to be sending troops. Their main attention was focused on the military movements of the Iron Duchy. "My lord, I found something good." "What?" William raised his eyebrows and looked at the excited elf. "Magic potion." Chapter 45. William carefully pushed aside the bushes. As expected, there were many small blue mushrooms growing at the bottom. Logically speaking, even if this kind of mushroom was given to ordinary people, they would not eat it. After all, they were not stupid. The brighter the color of the mushroom, the more poisonous it was. But the magic emitted from a mushroom was not fake. What was magic? Magic was the free molecules that were emitted in the air. Ahem, I can't lie anymore. Anyway, whether it's battle energy or magic points, they're replenished by magic. This is a world created by a game. What logic are you talking about? William carefully examined and found that there were many mushrooms under the bushes. He looked happy. Be careful, don't step on them. See if there are any potion fairies here. Potion fairies, a magical creature born from nature. These creatures were usually the size of a palm and had a human form. They also had a pair of small wings that were almost transparent. They flew fast and nimble like the wind. Where there were many potions, there would often be a fairy born. And the natural habit of the fairies was to take care of these potions. They were hard-working gardeners, trying their best to make the potions grow more and more prosperous. Can there really be fairies? Lautner looked happy. That was really good stuff. He did not have to worry about not having enough potions in the future. Of course, fairies and elves were not related by blood, but the affection of elves for fairies was often beyond imagination. There were no less than tens of thousands of fairies in the Dark Knight City. Every fairy's life was like that of an emperor, and they were served very freely. The main reason was that both were born from nature. In particular, elves had strong combat power, and fairies were too cute. They were like little Lolas with a light and soft body. It made the elves involuntarily have a desire to protect them. Not long after, the fairy hiding in the mushrooms popped out. The palm-sized little fellow flapped her 2 little wings, and a small blue mushroom grew on her head. She pouted and opened her big eyes that were on the verge of tears. She said with grievance, "Do you want to eat me? Can you let me go? I don't taste good. You can eat mushrooms." She struggled to pull down a mushroom that was as big as her body and raised it into the air. "Here, you can eat mushrooms. Don't eat me, okay?" Heavens, what a cute creature. When the group of elves saw this little cutie, their hearts instantly bloomed, and their eyes stared straight at this little elf. "Cute, I want to—" William glanced at the guard and made him shut his mouth. Then he revealed a face that he thought was friendly and slowly squatted on the ground. "We won't eat you. Elves are friends of the fairies. Why would we eat you? What are you hiding for? Is there a monster that wants to eat you?" The little mushroom head sprite hurriedly nodded. She gestured with her hands and said, "There's a huge dog with a big bloody mouth. It wants to eat me." Its 2 wings flapped, and with a whoosh, it hid into the mushroom group. Once again, it revealed its small head and said, "If I hadn't hidden fast enough and hid in the mushroom group, I would have been eaten by that big dog long ago." "Oh." William touched the mushroom, puzzled. He suddenly realized something and said, "So it's not ripe yet. No wonder the lightning wolf didn't move its mouth. It's probably waiting for the mushroom to ripen before eating all of you. Are you going to eat me too?" The mushroom head sprite covered her mouth with her small hands. Her eyes stared straight at William, and her tears could not help but fall. No one knew how this little fellow grew. She was obviously not very old, but her tears were like raindrops, forming a string. No, why would I eat you? Don't cry. If you cry again, that big dog will come back to life." William hurriedly explained. After all, the mood of the little elf would affect the growth of the magic potion. The little elf touched the small mushroom on her head and nodded at him. She stopped crying and hid in the mushroom group again. She revealed her small head and looked at the group of big fellows who had a very comfortable aura. It had to be said, the little elf also had pointy ears. Just this characteristic alone made the 2 races have a good impression of each other. William and Lautner talked for a while. Then he squatted down and said to the little elf, "The forest is too dangerous. You should come home with me. I'll help you move. How about that? Do you have delicious food at home? Yes. Is there anything fun at home? Yes. Is there danger at home? Yes. It's impossible." William's mouth twitched. This little clever girl was really not a good thing. The mushroom elf bit her finger and finally nodded. "Then help me move." There was no need for William to command. A group of elves helped to dig deep to ensure that not a single mushroom would be damaged. As for this mushroom elf, it was also gently held in the hands of a female elfin ranger, who happily explained to it about its future home. William stood up and turned to Lautner. It's probably a newly born elf. Its brain is not smart enough. Otherwise, it would have pounced on us long ago. That's right. According to the memory inheritance given to them by nature, the little elf will not be on guard against us. Lautner nodded. Elves and little elves were both the favorites of nature. The relationship between the two had been very good since ancient times. Fortunately, we have mithril. Otherwise, I really don't know how to feed this little fellow. William raised his eyebrows. The little elf liked to absorb the magic from all kinds of metals. For example, mithril, adamantine, orichalcum, and even all kinds of gems were food for the little elf. That's right. The little elf ate money, so most people could not afford to feed these little cuties. The little elf would not directly eat the mithril and other metals. Instead, she would absorb the magic on it, and then use her magic talent to expand the scale of the magic potion. In general, there would only be returns with some investment, and the importance of the magic potion was self-evident. For the players, the magic potion was a short-term double experience pill. It could only be used once a day, but it would increase the double experience for a period of time every day. For the game that did not have the tools of the shop, this was already very rare for the players. The most important thing was that the magic potion could slowly increase the bloodline potential of the NPCs and increase their level. This was an important way for the NPCs to become stronger. It's hard to buy a little elf, even if you have money. As a tycoon with a mine in his family, William was also very rich. For the pure-blooded elves, the little elf was a friend and a relative, not a commodity. Not to mention wanting to buy it. Even mentioning it would be regarded as a declaration of war. This feeling was like when your friend said to you, "I want to borrow your beautiful wife to go on a trip. I will definitely not be cuckolded." Who would be willing? For the human countries, the little elf was a national weapon. It was more important than steel and war horses. If they were not forced, they would not trade it. Anyway, if William wanted to get the little elf, he could only try his luck. By the way, shall I give you a name? William suddenly said. The mushroom elf raised her head in confusion. In the future, you will be the scout. Ahem, you will be called Timo. Timo. The mushroom elf blinked and flew around William excitedly. Timo, 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 Timo.